We direct your attention to the man with the sleek leather briefcase. His name, Dr. Mallory Craig.
Thanks, bud.
Occupation, psychologist, newly employed by the Crestridge Sanitarium. For the last 2 weeks, he has been visualizing his first day, looking forward to it with eager anticipation. But there's a terror behind those cold institutional walls that nothing in his education has prepared him for.
Dr. Craig?
Yes.
Rebecca Robb. Everyone calls me Becky. I'm the catch-all head nurse, good cop, bad cop, advisor on policy, and tracker down of missing paychecks. Glad to have you aboard.
Thank you. Glad to be here. This place has got a fine reputation. I only hope I can live up to it.
I'll get you the files on your clients. You'll be taking over Dr. Parnett's group, about 6 or 7 people. I think you'll find them all quite fascinating.
Thank you, Becky. Becky, can I see you a second?
Sure.
What can you tell me about this patient? Name of Sharon Miles. It says here she committed herself.
That's correct. Although Dr. Parnett thought there might also have been some family pressure to check in.
It also says she refused to leave the house, was constantly rearranging furniture in strange ways, and refused to sleep anywhere but in a plain white room.
Still does. Since she's been here, she's repainted her room, I guess about half a dozen times by now. Anytime there's a spot or a crack. Dr. Parnett said to let her do it. It might be good therapy for her. She dresses only in solid colors and refuses to leave her room except for meals and counseling sessions. And then only with difficulty.
I've never heard of anything like this before. What's her attitude?
Frightened. Doctor, in my 10 years as a nurse, I've never seen anyone so completely, utterly terrified.
Of what?
I don't know. Even Dr. Parnett couldn't find out that one. Good night, Doctor.
Hi. I know it's a little bit after office hours, but I thought I'd pop by and say hello, if you don't mind. Yours? Nice work. I'm afraid arts and crafts are pretty much beyond me. Tried to make a bookcase once, ended up as a napkin holder. Nice room. Spartan, but very nice.
Thank you.
I've been going over the caseload, and yours is very interesting. I noticed that you graduated to therapy on a voluntary basis.
Dr. Parnett decided not to push matters. If there was something I wanted to talk about, I'd talk about it.
But you haven't. You haven't been to therapy in nearly 2 months. You know, I'm sure if you were to try again, I could arrange for a field trip.
No. I don't think that would be a good idea. Not yet. When I'm ready, maybe.
All right. But if you should ever feel like talking, I think you know where to find me. Good evening.
Ah, good. There you are. I've been looking all over for you. Before everyone went home for the night, I wanted to introduce you to the rest of the staff.
Fine. That'll be all right.
Get it away from me! Get it away from me! Get it away from me! I told her we don't have any other heavy blankets. It's getting colder and she's... I don't care! Get it away! I don't want patterns!
Look, just go and get 2 or 3 light ones. That should be all right, don't you think?
As long as they're plain. One color, no patterns.
No patterns. I promise. Come on.
Guess I didn't make a very good impression last night. I want to thank you for what you did. The staff gets a little impatient with me at times.
All forgotten.
Thank you.
But it would help me tremendously in the future if I understood why you were so concerned.
Hey, Doc. Haven't you heard? Nobody in here but us loonies. We don't have to have reasons for what we do.
I disagree. And for what it's worth, I don't think you are a loony. Scared, yes. And I'd like to try and help. Talk to you for a while.
All right. If you just move that for the time being. After I finished college, I met Jeff. And we got married about a year later. And we had a boy, Bobby. He's 7 years old now. And I don't hate my mother or my father, and I never wanted to sleep with my brother. And I wasn't frightened by a checkered sheet when I was a little girl.
But you were frightened last night. I saw you. You were terrified by that blanket.
No, not the blanket. The patterns.
Why? Don't you want to leave this place? I can't imagine you'd want to stay. Then why don't you tell me?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Try me.
You ever look closely at patterns, Doctor? I mean the kind of patterns you find in wallpaper. Cracks in the ceiling. Linoleum floors.
I suppose so, yes.
You ever see faces in those patterns? The way that the cracks and colors come together so that if you look at it, just so, you could swear you see a face.
Of course. We had a linoleum floor when I was a kid. I used to spend hours looking at the patterns, trying to make faces out of them. See, that's the way the brain works. It tries to find order in chaos. Given the chance, the mind plays a game of connect the dots with whatever it happens to be looking at the time.
Yes, but did you ever wonder why you see faces? Not animals or plants or buildings. But faces.
No, actually, until you mentioned it, it hadn't occurred to me.
It didn't occur to me either. At least not at first. It was Sunday, and I was looking up at the wallpaper. It was covered in abstract patterns, you know the kind. And I was looking up at the wallpaper, looking into the patterns. I saw a face in it. Doctor, I swear it looked back at me. Right at me. I caught it off guard, I guess, because I got the most terrible, horrible feeling that it knew that I saw it. And I looked away. It was gone.
Perhaps you only thought the face was looking at you.
No.
know when you're crossing the street and you make eye contact with the driver the way everybody tells you to. And even though you can't see them clearly, you can feel when you've met their eyes. You know they're looking at you. Well, this face was looking at me, just like that. And why did it suddenly disappear?
You said yourself that you looked away. At that moment, your mind rearranged the dots into a different pattern, one without a face.
No, there was something there, Doctor. I saw it and it saw me. It's trying to kill me. I saw a face in it. And Doctor, I swear it looked back at me. Right at me. I caught it off guard, I guess, because I got the most terrible, horrible feeling that it knew that I saw it. Then I looked away. And it was gone. Staying late?
No. I was just leaving.
Well, I hope you brought your coat. Looks like we're heading into the rainy season. Good night, Doctor.
Good night, Becky. You said yourself that you looked away. At that moment, your mind rearranged the dots into a different pattern, one without a face.
No, there was something there, Doctor. I saw it and it saw me. It's trying to kill me. After I saw the first face, I started seeing more of them. They were watching me, peering out of the patterns of carpet, ceilings, wallpaper. I tried to paint over them, but they kept coming through. Faces in the pile of leaves next door. Faces in tree trunks, brick walls. Faces in the doodles of my 7-year-old son. My clothes. I had to stop wearing patterns. That's why I don't allow patterns in my room. That's how they come through. As long as they're out of range, I'm safe. Sometimes I get the feeling that I hear them talking, whispering about me, trying to decide what they're going to do about me.
You keep saying they. Who are they?
I don't know. Sometimes I get the feeling that they're looking in from someplace else, someplace parallel to this, that only intersects us at certain points. I get the feeling that they're old. Very, very old.
What do you think they would do to you, finally, if they got you alone?
I don't know. I try not to think about it. And I'm not going to give them the chance to find out.
Did this have something to do with your decision to commit yourself?
I'm awfully tired, Doctor. Can we pick this up?
Will you tell me tomorrow what happened?
Don't lose your stuff. Come here. Come here. Don't resist.
Bobby!
Hello.
It's me, Sharon. I've changed my mind. I can't live like this anymore. Someone has to know in case something happens to me. Tomorrow I'll tell you everything.
Glad to hear that, Sharon.
And, Doctor, I lied to you. I think I know what they are and what they're trying to do to me. I can't trust them not to. Doctor, please, if anything happens to me, promise me you'll protect them. Jeff and my son, promise me?
Well, I promise.
Good morning, Doctor. Pardon the bucket. We had the roof fixed last winter, but it still leaks a lot. There are buckets all over the place. A storm that big always agitates the patients, and last night was a doozy. Around midnight, we had everyone quieted down, except for your favorite patient.
Sharon? What happened?
Well, she just started screaming right in the middle of the night, screaming and pounding on her door, trying to get out. Kept saying she wanted another room, that she had to get out.
Did she say why?
Well, she was hysterical. Any other night, we'd have given her another room, but you know how crowded we are. She was too disturbed to let her wander around, so we had to lock her room. I called for another nurse to help sedate her. She really fought us, too.
Why didn't you call me?
Well, we were going to, but she quieted down. We didn't want to disturb you.
Good morning, Doctor.
I hear you give our nurses quite a night.
Well, I was being silly, and I realize that now. Storms frighten me. Actually, thanks to you, I realize I've been silly about a lot of things.
Such as?
Such as being here, committing myself, abandoning my son and husband just because of some perfectly irrational fears. It's wrong. And I can see that now. I guess all I really needed was someone to talk to.
I fear you give me way too much credit. It's a very pretty outfit. Very intricate patterns, I thought.
Just one more sign that all is well. I called the front office and had it brought to my room. With some luck, I signed the release forms and I'll be leaving here this afternoon.
So soon? I thought we could at least finish our...
We did. And again. Thank you.
Your cab's here. Thought I'd help you with your bags.
Thank you.
Besides, I couldn't just let you go without saying goodbye, could I?
No, I suppose not. All the help is quite appreciated.
Did you hear something?
No. Must have been the wind.
It's closing time.
Oh, look at this shot. You'll never sink this in a million years. Guy thinks he's the next Fats Brown. Come on, let's get out of here.
Hey, Joe, how come he gets to stay?
Because he asks nice. Now get going.
I'm off to Mulvaney's. Anybody for a beer?
Do you see what I mean? You see what I mean?
An impossible shot, but I made it. The right stuff, the right draw, perfect position. And what do I get? Fats Brown, Fats Brown. Well, I'm sick of it, Fats Brown. I'm the best pool cue on Randolph Street. Me, Jesse Cardiff, and everybody knows it. Fats was good. So he was good. But he's dead. Do you hear me? He's dead. He's been dead for 15 years, but every time I turn around, I hear about him. That was pretty good, Jesse, but Fats was better. Fats was the best, Jesse. Fats Brown is dead. If he was alive in this room, I could beat him. You'd see, I'd give anything to play him one game. I'd show you who's best. One game. One lousy game.
At your service.
Jesse Cardiff, pool shark, the best on Randolph Street, who will soon learn that trying to be the best at anything carries its own special risk, in or out of the Twilight Zone.
You called?
But you're
Dead? Not really. As long as people talk about you, you don't really die. As long as people speak your name, you continue. The legend doesn't die because the man does.
This is impossible.
Nothing's impossible. Just some things are less likely than others, that's all.
This isn't a rib. You're him. You're
James Howard Brown. See, my friends call me Fats. Now, I know it's a shock, but you called me. I didn't call you.
I didn't mean that it...
It's just let it talk.
I was only...
You like to play with fire, but you don't like to cook. Is that it? You know that you're not as good as you claim to be. You know deep down inside that you're second rate.
Hey, hold on.
Strictly second rate. What, are you afraid? Look, I come a long way. I don't like to be fooled with. I meet guys like you all the time. A little knack, a little skill, a little style. But when the heat's on, you choke. Excuse me.
You've never seen me play. How you know I can't beat you? It is possible, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's possible. But you ain't gonna do it with your mouth.
All right, fat boy, dead or alive. I'll tell you something. You may be some tin god, but I think you're just a big balloon waiting for somebody to put a needle in you. Well, I'm that somebody. And this is the needle.
So you play me then?
Rack 'em.
Steaks?
Steaks?
Yeah, there's something to make the game a little more interesting.
And you're all of it. Hey.
Use your brains, kid. What good is that to me?
And what?
Something to make my long journey worthwhile.
Name it.
You said that you'd give anything to play with me. Anything.
What are you talking about, pal? Just what kind of stakes are you talking about?
Life or death.
What?
You beat me, you live. You lose, you die. It's interesting. It's interesting to see how much faith you have in yourself. You don't want to be the best bad enough, kid. When I was your age, I'd have jumped at the chance. But then again, I wasn't second rate.
Hey, hold on. You say I don't want to be the best bad enough? You're wrong. Do you know how many nights I slept on this table? Yeah, I did that. I made a deal with the owner. That way I could practice after the place closed. I haven't seen a movie in years. I haven't read a book. I haven't dated a girl because it would take too much time from this table.
That's a lot of talk. You'll never know till you risk everything.
Stop pushing! Wait! Don't go.
Then you accept the terms. Life or death.
Rack the balls.
I had this specially made for me in St. Louis. Rock maple, ebony. Cost me $600. I've been making a living from it for about 25 years.
What's the name of the game? 9-ball? 8-ball?
Rotation.
Get out of here. Nobody plays that.
I do. What's money, not up to it?
I'm up to it. I know the rules. 300 points. You toss for that break?
Sure.
Call it.
Tails. Change your mind? You can, you know. Heads. My break. Two balls on the rail. A perfect break. No advantage given. Now it's your turn to scatter the balls.
Do something with that.
Looks like you're sewed up. It'll cost you if you don't connect with the one ball.
Bank. Two rails, 2-ball corner pocket. You see that, fat boy? Funny. No man can rise to the occasion when his life is at stake. 2-ball, 2 points.
Not bad.
It was great! You're like all the others. You keep trying to bring me down. When I was a kid, there were plenty of guys like you. Guys that were good at things. Like music, basketball, arithmetic. They'd do everything they could to make me feel this high.
But you fooled them, didn't you?
Right. I knew that somewhere there was something I could be good at. I had the eye for it.
What happened to it?
ball you scratch. And that'll cost you points.
Your shot.
Points. You have 7.
Game's young yet, my friend. Very young. Shoot. Rack them, please. $15 ball in that pocket, and a perfect break at the same time. One. And 2.
You need every ball on the table to win. I only need one of them.
You know, Jesse, there's more to life than this pool hall. I mean, it's not right for you to keep yourself cooped up here like this. I mean, you ought to get out a little more, see what's going on outside.
You didn't become the best by sitting on a park bench. You spent plenty of time with a cue in your hands.
Yeah, of course I did, but I still had a life. I mean, I've been to places where they never even heard of pool. I know. I don't look the part, but I've made love. I've watched sunsets. I've swam in the ocean. And when I think of all the beautiful things that there are to do in this world, it hurts me to see you rotting away. Because that's what you're doing. You're rotting in this dark room.
You're lying. You're trying to distract me. That's low. You did that on purpose. You make me miss.
A little gamesmanship, a little pressure, and you come apart. That's kid stuff. To break your concentration, you go wild.
That's it. The game ball. All my life, I've waited for this moment. Sink it, and I beat you. I become the greatest.
If you sink it.
You're sweating. Why are you nervous?
For reasons you probably wouldn't understand.
Oh, I understand. It means a lot, doesn't it? Even to a dead man. To have your name up there as the unbeatable champion of all time.
Well, it carries a certain satisfaction, yes.
I'll give you a shot at my crown, Jesse. But only if you're willing to stake your life on the game. Couldn't be just a friendly game, could it?
Well, I take him as I get him. It's not just a friendly game to you. It's a life or death thing. So I acted accordingly. You see, the champions and the legends serve a purpose. They're an incentive. They're a challenge.
I don't need no challenge.
Everybody needs a challenge. The great musicians, they're better. They're better because of Bach. They're better because of Beethoven, Mozart. See, I'm just a pool player. But I'm the best.
You were the best. What are you waiting for? Get it over with. You said life or death.
No, you really didn't expect me to kill you, no, did you?
You said if I'd won, I'd live. If I'd lost, I'd die.
And you will. As all second-raters die. You'll be buried and forgotten without me touching you. See, if you'd have beaten me, if you'd have beaten me, you would have lived forever.
You tricked me.
No. No, you just have to be tested under pressure, that's all. Any man can be a marksman if the target doesn't shoot back.
Wait! It's not over! I haven't given up. I'll practice. Night and day. I'm still alive. I can be better. I will be better. From me again, Fats Brown.
Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime. And departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time, on the earth as we know it, and in the Twilight Zone.
Alex. General? Ranks later, all right?
So what's the job? With all the security around here, you think we're back in the Manhattan Project.
2 months ago, this was a research lab. Government contract, particle physics, that sort of thing, nothing unusual. Then something happened. The research team was running a new experiment on wormholes, theoretical subspace corridors like black holes, go anywhere in the galaxy in a second. Things got out of hand. When they cleared away the rubble, they found what's on the other side of that wall. Here. Better put these on. They'll help a little, but try not to stare directly into it. When they found it, we brought in scientists from all over the place. Cornell, NASA, JPL. They've poked and prodded and scanned. The high IQ types from Caltech said terminology is irrelevant. I called it a gate. They didn't argue.
A gate? To where?
We don't know. Hell, we're not even sure how it got here. All the data from the experiment was wiped out in the explosion. But somehow that equipment in there is generating it, maintaining it. Well, we'll probably figure it out in time, but right now it's as if we've unlocked a door and forgotten the combination. So if we close it, we may not be able to open it again. We have to know what's on the other side of that wall, Alex. That's why we called you. The brass wants you to go in there.
Alexander McAndrews, former test pilot, with a paper trail of commendations and a closet full of broken records. A man for whom the unknown is to be faced, not feared, conquered, not surrendered to. Alexander McAndrews, who is about to face yet another unknown. But this one is unlike all the others, for this one burns at the very heart of the Twilight Zone.
You weren't the first one on our list, Alex. They went before you. Second Lieutenant Emilio Perez, Sergeants Evelyn Marks, Len Sinclair, and a captain, Henry Kincaid. They volunteered. We gave them the best equipment we had. And one by one, they went in that gate. None of them have come back.
No contact?
I'm through. It became gone. There's something
Maximum contact time, 10 seconds.
It's static.
4 people, Alex. 4 good people. The State Department wants to close us down. Just pull the plug. Try to forget it ever happened. Pentagon wants to push ahead on grounds of national security. But as far as I'm concerned, those people are still alive, and if there's any chance to rescue them.
Understood.
I didn't want you for this, Alex. You've paid your dues and then some.
Don't know if you've heard, but I got the word last week. Seems like I'm getting a little bit too old to be a rocket jockey. Putting me behind a desk. I can't live with that, Greg. So, given the choice, be a great way to go out, wouldn't it?
You'll come back. If anyone can make it, you will. You're a good soldier, Alex.
That's what Sarah said the day she left me. Good soldier. Always ready to follow orders, do his duty.
Last chance. You don't have to do it.
Look around, General. What else do I have? So where do I suit up?
Systems check beginning by mark. No interference. Reading 5 by 5. Recorders up and running.
All right.
Read binary reprocessors. Field stable.
Is there anyone you want me to?
I'll see you soon.
Goggles on. Okay, ray shield. All right, Alex, we're cleared to proceed. Now remember, no heroics, strictly threat analysis. Just go in, take a fast look around, then get out of there. You copy?
Affirmative, General. Entering the gate.
God go with you, Alex.
You're a white light. Have a sensor. Very, very fast.
We're losing contact, General.
ComCon. This is McAndrews. Do you read? ComCon? I repeat, this is McAndrews. Do you copy, ComCon? I don't know whether you're getting any of this or not, ComCon, but I'm going to keep recording anyway. I found a glove. Appears to be one of ours. Atmosphere and environment seems similar to ours. Oxygen atmosphere, all right. Sweet, cool, crisp air. I don't see any sign of the gate from this side. Perhaps it's not in the visible spectrum here. Moving on. I'll continue to log entries at 5-minute intervals.
Still no communication, General.
Boost the signal.
Well, I'm trying, but I'm just not getting anything.
Damn it, boost it some more. Come on, Alex, talk to me. Where the hell are you?
Welcome, Major.
Kincaid? Captain Henry Kincaid?
Present and accounted for, sir. We've been waiting for you. Well, not you in particular, but somebody like you. But I'm happy with the selection. I can't think of a better choice for their needs or ours.
excuse me?
Everything will be explained in time, Major. In the meantime, please, if you will come with us.
What is this place?
Call it heaven.
All I want is a simple answer to a simple question. Where are we? What is this place?
Lieutenant Paris, sir. I'm the navigational specialist. I've been here about a week, and the stars... Well, Major, the stars are all wrong. I don't know where we are, but it's not Earth. And frankly, I don't think we're even in the same neighborhood anymore.
Why haven't you tried to get back?
We can't go back. We've surveyed the area. And as far as we can tell, the gate doesn't exist on this side. It only works one way, from there to here.
And you just welcome everybody?
It is my prerogative as leader of this community. We are a peaceful people, Major. Not suspicious. Of supplies, we have plenty, more than enough to share. If this has become an unintentional prison for you, please be assured we'll exert every effort to make it a pleasant one. There is much we have to offer. They've told me about the world you come from, a place of such hate. Here we have no possessions to steal, no religion save one, the sanctity of life. No law, but to be kind to one another. That is why we were pleased to see it was you who was sent to us. They say you are a man of honor.
It's the kind of place we've all dreamed about, Major.
I think I'll reserve judgment till I've checked things out for myself.
We encourage you to explore, and we will give you all the help we can, as we did to the others. I sense in you a man who's been searching for peace for a long time without finding it. Here you will. You do not play, Major?
Too old, I guess.
That will change. I'm not quite as old as you think. Have you had any luck trying to find the way back?
None, you were right. Dawn to dusk, we searched every square inch of the area I came through. Nothing. It's a funny thing, though. The more time I spend here, the less I begin to worry about it. See, I've been a soldier all my life. My father was, and his father before him. They said you have to fight for what you believe. They never told me what to believe. They told me I have to follow orders. They never told me why. Stay busy enough, though, and you don't worry about it.
You have a family?
Not really. My wife left me about a year ago. Said she didn't believe in bigamy. Couldn't compete with honor, duty, orders.
I'm glad you're here, Alex. I'm very glad.
Evening, Major.
I think Alex will do for now. You seen Baron?
She was here a little while ago. She'll be back in a few minutes.
Thanks.
It is now 3 days, 12 hours since Alexander McAndrews went through the gate. In another 24 hours, we will consider him lost in action. I've recommended we shut down operations and Send no more people through the gate without more detailed analysis. The brass disagree. We lose more in training operations, they told me. They've already picked their next volunteer. He comes highly recommended. I don't know him. Thank God for small favors.
This place is having on us is incredible. We love it here.
You lied to me.
Alex, please.
You lied to me. You told me there was no way out, but there is. That gate's still there, all right? But it's only because of refraction you can only see it at night. So you made it a point to take me there only during the day, knowing that I wouldn't find anything. You decided to stay here and keep everybody else with you.
We told you the truth the best way we could, Major. If we went back and reported what we found, this place would be swarming with troops and experts and God knows what else. They'd ruin it.
That's garbage.
Is it? You know how the military thinks. What do you think would happen if they got a hold of it?
You could leave out some of the facts.
They have ways of making any of us talk. Truth serums, you name it. Perfection is a fragile thing, Major. It doesn't survive the microscope. When we saw what kind of place this was, we took a vote. The decision was unanimous. We're not going back. This is Eden, Major. Would you want to be the one to bring the snake into the garden?
You're forgetting something. I didn't vote. Now, you're younger than I am. Maybe you can forget your responsibility and your duty, but I can't. I'm going back.
I'm afraid we can't allow that, Major. See how easy it is? The first solution of the angry man. How many other guns you want to turn loose here?
I don't want to hurt you, Kincaid. But I'm ordering you to get out of the way.
Then you'll have to kill me, Alex.
No! Alex! Alex! Please wait, don't go!
I'm sorry, but I have to.
Why? You said yourself there was nothing back there for you!
Because I'm a good soldier. That's all I've ever been. Maybe that's all I'll ever be. You take that away and what's left? You said yourself, I'm a man of honor. So please, lead me with that. That's all I have.
So you're convinced they're a totally agrarian society?
Judging from everything I saw, yes.
Any potential threat to security?
No.
Thank you, Major. Comments?
I think we're in a perfect position. The press isn't aware of the situation. It's a whole new frontier.
Good job, Alex.
You stink.
Technology advisors.
You did what you had to. You followed orders.
Yeah.
Keep the guns in our hands.
Yeah, I did that, didn't I?
kind of like the symmetry of that.
Well, I still think it's worth considering.
I think you're overlooking the strategic value of this situation.
The first strike potential is enormous. There's nowhere we couldn't hit with troops or tactical nukes in a hot second. Hell, we could even store the stuff up there, and no one could take it out with a first strike.
Tell me something, Greg. Would you have let the snake into the Garden of Eden?
Fortunately for me, that wasn't a decision I had to make.
Why we have to go in now, so that we can call the shots. I mean, the Pentagon is dying for an opportunity like this, and we must prevent any kind of leaks whatsoever, or the whole thing is shot.
What if we can open up more gates between their world and our Earth? We can use it as a transfer point for troops and material.
Clandestine and preemptive actions could be achieved without detection.
Alex! Alex, stop!
What the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Hey, tell the brass that perfection is a fragile thing. Tell them I did my job. And tell them I retired.
Stop! Close that gate!
Are you sure they won't build another?
It's a freak combination in the first place. If the gate were still there for them to study, maybe they could duplicate it. But it's gone permanently.
So what do you do now?
For the moment, absolutely nothing.
Major Alexander McAndrews, retired, who learned that there is a better world and that sometimes heaven is a place better left untouched by human hands. There may be one more commendation yet to come for the Major, one that says, for services rendered in the Twilight Zone.
Just promise me you won't touch a single thing. Thank you, Mrs. Milligan, she said, her expression turning into a satisfied smile. If you want to pay double for a room full of junk, that is your business. Just then, Miss Walker arrived at the doorway, looking out of breath and worried. Dr. Sinclair, she said. He has escaped. What? Sinclair asked, turning to her. Mr. Witherspoon, he ran away from the hospital. Should I call the police? Mrs. Milligan asked, looking alarmed. No, Dr. Sinclair said quickly. Everything is going to be fine. He ran out of the apartment and into the street, looking desperately in both directions. He finally spotted Edgar walking calmly down the sidewalk, carrying a small suitcase. Mr. Witherspoon, Sinclair called out, running to catch up with him. Edgar stopped and turned, offering a warm smile. You got a handkerchief, doctor? Oh, yes, right away, Sinclair said, fumbling in his pockets and handing over a clean white handkerchief. Thanks, Edgar said, wiping his brow. That lady at the hospital had me dressed so fast. I left mine behind. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, his voice filled with sincere emotion. I do not know how to begin to apologize. Nothing in my training, nothing in my years of study, had prepared me for a case like yours. I was wrong. Well, it was nice meeting you, Edgar said, patting him on the arm. Where are you going? Sinclair asked, realizing the old man was walking away. Away, finally, Edgar said with a sigh of relief. After 11 years of doing this, I am finally free. But what about the machine? Sinclair asked, his voice rising in panic. What about the balance of the world? The voice spoke to me while I was in your hospital, Edgar explained, his eyes sparkling. It said, Edgar, have you ever been to Miami? I said no, but I used to think it would be a nice place to retire. Go for it, the voice said. You are off duty. If you'll excuse me, I have got to stop the shaking in Santa Barbara. He stepped inside and began to pull the heavy wooden door shut. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair called out. On your way out, could you dump this? Edgar asked, thrusting a small paper bag filled with rusty nails into the doctor's hands before clicking the lock into place. The next morning, Dr. Sinclair sat in his office, staring at the paper bag of rusty nails on his desk. He was interrupted by the arrival of Cynthia, Edgar's niece, who looked even more stressed than she had the day before. Good afternoon, doctor, she said, her voice tight with tension. Did you see Uncle Edgar? Yes, this morning, Sinclair replied, leaning back in his chair. Well, she asked, leaning forward. I couldn't exactly call it a long conversation, Dr. Sinclair admitted, rubbing his temple. But it was long enough to realize that he is. Absolutely, Cynthia interrupted. He is completely gone. On the other hand, Dr. Sinclair said, trying to offer a balanced perspective. Mr. Witherspoon appears happy and like harmless. Harmless? Cynthia exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief. He pesters strangers on the street. He runs after garbage trucks in his pajamas. That is far from harmless, doctor. Just yesterday, somebody saw him take a baby's bottle out of its carriage. The mother was terrified. I am afraid he will get arrested next time. Doctor, I will sign anything. I will cooperate in any way I can to have him committed to a safe facility where he can get help. All right, Dr. Sinclair said, raising a hand to calm her. Maybe I will have another chat with him. A longer one this time. See if I can understand the nature of his delusions. Suddenly, a strange, low hum vibrated through the floorboards of the office. Dr. Sinclair paused, his brow furrowing as he listened to the faint, metallic resonance. Did you hear that? He asked. What? Cynthia replied, looking around the room. There was something about a. Dr. Sinclair shook his head, the sound fading into the ambient noise of the city outside. Sorry, it was nothing. I do not know what I was thinking. I will call you as soon as I can, Cynthia. Thank you very much, doctor, she said, standing up and gathering her things. After she left, Dr. Sinclair turned on the small transistor radio on his bookshelf to catch the midday news, hoping to clear his mind. Seismic activity could be a problem in the western states. The announcer's voice droned. Meanwhile, acid rain is affecting the northern lakes even more than scientists originally estimated. Dr. Sinclair switched off the radio and decided to return to the basement apartment. He could not shake the feeling that there was something unique about Edgar Witherspoon, something that did not fit the standard textbook definitions of mental illness. He stood outside the padlocked door and knocked firmly. Mr. Witherspoon, go away, a muffled voice called out from within. I am not home. It is Dr. Sinclair, the psychiatrist said, leaning closer to the door. I was here last week. You remember? Sorry, I wasn't home last week either, Edgar shouted back. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, raising his voice to sound authoritative. I could legally force you to open this door to me. I can get a court order for a psychiatric evaluation. Is that what you want? There was a long silence from inside the apartment. Then, the heavy padlock clicked, and the door swung open. Edgar stood there, looking at the doctor with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. You are a curious one, Edgar said, stepping back to let him in. Odd, you mean? Dr. Sinclair asked, crossing the threshold. I mean nosy, Edgar corrected with a grin. I am paid to be nosy, Sinclair replied, looking around the dimly lit entryway. Curious, really? Edgar asked, closing the door behind them. Don't you think that is odd? Most people are curious for nothing. That is very nice for you, though. Are the hours good? Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, turning to face him. Why do you collect dolls' heads, shoes, paper clips? What is the purpose of all this? Edgar shrugged his shoulders. I can't afford Rembrandts. What? Sinclair asked, taken aback by the joke. Oh no, Edgar suddenly gasped, his eyes darting to a complex structure in the center of the room. Oh no. As usual, it has been lovely talking to you, doctor. Please don't call again. I may have to, Dr. Sinclair said firmly. The next time it might not be so lovely, you understand what I mean, Mr. Witherspoon. The authorities could get involved. Wouldn't you rather invite me in of your own free will and show me what you are working on? Edgar stared at him for a long moment, the playful light leaving his eyes, replaced by a deep, serious intensity. He sighed softly and stepped aside. You must, he whispered. You must, but be very, very careful where you walk. Dr. Sinclair stepped into the main room of the apartment, and his breath caught in his throat. The space was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was not a chaotic pile of trash as Mrs. Milligan had described. It was a massive, intricate, three-dimensional sculpture that filled the entire room from floor to ceiling. Thousands of seemingly random objects were suspended in the air, connected by thin copper wires, bicycle spokes, and colorful strings of yarn. There were old tin cans, broken clocks, a single leather shoe, light bulbs, a brass thimble, a plastic yo-yo, and a blonde doll's head suspended over a small metal cup. The entire apparatus was in constant, gentle motion. It hummed with a delicate, rhythmic vibration, like a massive, organic clockwork mechanism. How is it, doctor? Edgar asked, watching Sinclair's face closely. It is very interesting, Mr. Witherspoon, Sinclair said, completely mesmerized by the sheer scale of the creation. What is it? This? Edgar asked, pointing to a small, spinning brass gear connected to a suspended teacup. This is the only thing that keeps the world from going poof. Dr. Sinclair took a slow breath, trying to process the statement. Now, let me understand you clearly, Mr. Witherspoon. You say that this machine is what keeps the world from going poof. And it is not easy, Edgar said, sighing as he adjusted a small rubber band near the top of the structure. Most things are nearly impossible to find. For instance, where would you look for a skate key these days? Oh, I can't imagine, Sinclair murmured, his eyes tracking a marble as it rolled down a copper track, hit a tiny bell, and hopped into a small felt pouch. I found one, though, Edgar said proudly. You think that is crazy? Well, you wouldn't by any chance have a business card, would you? Oh, yes, of course, Dr. Sinclair said, reaching into his breast pocket and pulling out a small, white card. He handed it, but Edgar dismissed it immediately, complaining that it was too big and brunette, whereas he desperately needed a blonde one, and he needed it in exactly 5 minutes. When the doctor asked what for, Edgar grew intensely serious, asking if Sinclair wanted Santa Barbara to fall into the ocean. He ordered the doctor to stand aside. With a sudden burst of energy, Edgar darted toward a pile of discarded toys, pulled out a small, blonde doll's head, and cried out in triumph, declaring that it was just in the nick of time and that there was no time to lose. Dr. Sinclair tried to call out to him, but Edgar, suddenly apologetic, realized he was being rude to a guest who had come all this way. He politely said goodbye, sent his love to his niece, and hurried off to his apartment, explaining that he had to stop the shaking in Santa Barbara. Before closing his door, he handed Sinclair a small bag of trash and asked him to dump it on his way out. Later that day, Dr. Sinclair met with Cynthia to discuss his observations. He admitted that while their brief chat could not be called a long conversation, it was long enough to realize that her uncle's mental state was highly concerning. However, the doctor noted that Edgar appeared happy and harmless. Cynthia scoffed at the word harmless. She pointed out that he pestered strangers on the street and chased garbage trucks, which was far from safe. She revealed that someone had recently seen him take a baby's bottle right out of its carriage, and she feared he would be arrested next time. Desperate, she offered to sign any commitment papers necessary to get him help. Sinclair, feeling a strange tug of curiosity, decided he needed to have another, longer chat with Edgar before making a final decision. During their conversation, the doctor thought he heard a faint, distant rumble, like a far-off tremor, but dismissed it as his imagination. The following week, Dr. Sinclair returned to Edgar's apartment. Standing outside the heavily locked door, Edgar, the world is a funny place. Little wars here, big wars there, volcanoes going off, storms, tornadoes, a terrific amount of noise and bother. You have to build something that will keep the world from going too far, maybe even going poof. What the pennies do for Big Ben, this machine does for the world. Dr. Sinclair looked at the intricate web of wires and junk. And who do you think it is who is speaking to you, Mr. Witherspoon? Well, Edgar said, scratching his chin thoughtfully, sometimes I think it is God. And then I think, no, God would have a deeper voice. This voice is much lighter, almost like a friendly neighbor. Would you care for a prune, doctor? Oh no, thank you, Sinclair said, waving his hand. I was just leaving. But you have just arrived, Edgar said, looking disappointed. Oh, careful, Sinclair warned as his sleeve brushed against a dangling piece of copper. I have no idea how the thing works, Edgar admitted, watching the wire swing gently back into place. All I know is that the voice tells me what it needs, and I get it. Goodbye, Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, opening the door. You keep up the good work. We could call it a sculpture, Edgar suggested, hoping for a compromise. Would that make my niece happy? Sinclair smiled softly. I don't think it is that simple. Oh no, Edgar sighed. If you happen to run across an old tuba, would you bring it by? I need it in 2 hours. Dr. Sinclair left the apartment, his mind filled with a strange mixture of professional concern and unscientific wonder. He could not deny the brilliant engineering of the machine, even if the premise behind it was entirely delusional. A few days later, Dr. Sinclair stood in the hallway of the Psychiatric Evaluation Center. Cynthia was beside him, looking determined, while Edgar sat on a wooden bench, looking small and defeated in a simple hospital gown. "Cynthia, don't do this to me," Edgar pleaded, looking up at his niece. "Uncle Edgar, please," she said, her voice softening with pity. "It is just for 3 days while they observe you." "It is too long," Edgar said, his voice rising in panic. "The machine has to be maintained. It has to be kept in balance every single hour." "Mr. Witherspoon," Dr. Sinclair said, stepping forward. "You hear voices. That isn't normal. You must understand that we only want to help you." "You hear voices, too," Edgar pointed out, looking directly at the psychiatrist. "No," Sinclair said. "Healthy people do not hear voices. You hear mine, don't you?" Edgar asked. "That is not the same thing," Sinclair replied, taken aback. "Why?" Edgar challenged. "What is the difference between a sane man hearing a crazy voice and a crazy man hearing a sane voice? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. You do not understand the risk you are taking by keeping me here." Suddenly, Edgar stiffened, his eyes widening as if listening to something far away. "I knew it," he whispered, his face turning pale. "There goes Tatoa." "What is Tatoa?" Dr. Sinclair asked, feeling a sudden chill. "A tiny island in the South Pacific," Edgar said, his voice filled with deep sadness. "What time is it, doctor?" Sinclair looked at his watch. "It is 3:17. At 3:17 in the afternoon, Tatoa became history because of you," Edgar said quietly, leaning his head back against the wall. "Please, while there is still time, let me go back. It will take me days to clean up this junk and get the balance back. Keep her away from it. Remember Tatoa." Later that evening, Dr. Sinclair sat in his study, trying to read a medical journal, but Edgar's words kept echoing in his mind. He represented a classic case of a retired professional who, feeling useless, had created an elaborate delusion of grandeur to convince himself that he was vital to the world's survival. It was a common psychological defense mechanism. "Poor Uncle Edgar," Sinclair muttered to himself. He reached over and turned on the radio, looking for some quiet background music to help him focus. Instead, a news broadcast came on. "The Mideast stalemate continues," the announcer said. "Congress passes the new Transportation Act. And in the South Pacific, the tiny island of Tatoa was destroyed by a massive tidal wave this afternoon. Details on this and all the news in an hour." Dr. Sinclair froze, his book slipping from his fingers and hitting the floor with a loud thud. "Did he say Tatoa?" Sinclair whispered to the empty room. He grabbed the telephone receiver, his hands shaking as he dialed. "Yes, the number for the Daily Chronicle, please. Thank you. Hello, I want to check on a news story. I just heard something on the radio about a tidal wave destroying an island in the South Pacific." "Yes, Tatoa. Are there any details?" He listened intently, his face growing paler with every second. "Really? When did it happen this afternoon? I mean, exactly what time did the wave hit?" He waited, holding his breath. 3:17? Thank you." He slammed the receiver down, his heart pounding in his chest. He ran out of his office and down the corridor, shouting for his assistant. "Miss Walker." "Yes, Dr. Sinclair?" she asked, looking up from her typewriter in surprise. "Tatoa was destroyed at exactly 3:17 this afternoon," Sinclair gasped, his eyes wide with panic. "Is that bad?" she asked, confused. "Last week, Santa Barbara was hit by an earthquake," Sinclair said, his voice rising in hysteria. "And Edgar was frantic about a blonde doll's head just minutes before. I am not taking any chances. Oh my God, the landlady. She is going to clear out his apartment. She will destroy the machine. Get Mr. Witherspoon released immediately," Sinclair ordered. "Drive him home yourself personally as fast as you can." Dr. Sinclair ran out of the building, jumped into his car, and sped toward the basement apartment on Elm Street. He arrived to find the door wide open, and Mrs. Milligan standing in the center of the room, holding a cardboard box. "Don't touch the thing," Sinclair screamed as he burst through the doorway. Mrs. Milligan jumped, dropping her box. Dr. Sinclair, you didn't touch anything, did you? You haven't moved anything? Not yet, she said, looking at him as if he had lost his mind. Why? Because this is the creation of a disordered mind. And by studying it, analyzing it just exactly as he left it, I can come to a deeper insight into Mr. Witherspoon's problem. He is a loony, Mrs. Milligan said, waving her hand at the intricate web of wires. What else do you have to know? I can't rent this place with all this garbage in it. All right, Sinclair said, breathing heavily. I will rent it. You? She asked, her eyebrows rising. Yes, yes, Sinclair said frantically. I will give you double what you are getting now. I will be up later tonight with the check that the tidal wave had indeed struck. Sinclair asked for the exact time of the disaster. Miss Walker reported that Tatoa had been destroyed at precisely 3:17 that afternoon. A wave of sheer panic washed over the doctor. He remembered that Santa Barbara had been hit by a minor earthquake the previous week, right when Edgar had been searching for the doll's head. Realizing the unimaginable truth, Sinclair ordered Miss Walker to have Edgar released immediately and driven home as fast as possible. Sinclair rushed to Edgar's apartment. When he arrived, he found Mrs. Milligan inside, holding a broom, preparing to clear out what she saw as a pile of dangerous junk. Sinclair screamed at her not to touch anything. Terrified, the landlady swore she had not touched a thing yet, but insisted she could not rent the apartment with all this garbage in it. In a desperate bid to save the world, Dr. Sinclair declared that he would rent the apartment himself, offering her double her asking price. Bewildered but pleased, she accepted, promising to return later for the check. Just as Mrs. Milligan left, Edgar entered the apartment, wearing a hospital gown and carrying his clothes. He had escaped. Sinclair, deeply humbled and breathless, apologized profusely. He admitted that nothing in his medical training had prepared him for a case like Edgar's. To Sinclair's surprise, Edgar began packing his clothes into a suitcase. He announced that, after 11 years, he was finally leaving. He explained that while he was in the hospital, the voice had spoken to him again, asking if he had ever been to Miami. When Edgar replied that he thought it would be a nice place to retire, the voice told him to go for it, declaring that he was officially off duty. Horrified, Dr. Sinclair asked what would happen to the machine. Edgar shrugged, stating that while he was retiring, the machine was still absolutely essential and had to be kept in balance. He pointed to a section of the contraption, noting that it already needed adjusting. Edgar suggested that if Sinclair now, you mean all this isn't necessary anymore? Sinclair asked, gesturing toward the basement apartment. Sure it is, Edgar said. It is absolutely essential. The world still has to be kept in balance. So who is going to do it? Sinclair asked, the weight of the realization settling heavily on his shoulders. Edgar looked back at the basement window, then back at the doctor. And look, it needs adjusting already. That is it. Now, if I can just get a ping-pong ball in there by 7:13 tonight. Well, I guess we solved that little problem. I'd get cracking if I was you. Impossible, Sinclair whispered, shaking his head. I refuse. I am a psychiatrist, a man of science. Jeremy, really, Edgar said, using the doctor's first name for the first time. You'll grow to like it. Give it a chance. So long, doctor. Don't take any wooden nickels. Unless you really need them, of course. With that, Edgar Witherspoon turned and walked down the street, disappearing into the late afternoon crowd, leaving Dr. Sinclair standing alone on the sidewalk. Mr. Witherspoon, Sinclair called out, but there was no answer. The doctor stood there for a long moment, the sounds of the city swirling around him. He felt the gentle vibration of the earth beneath his feet, a delicate, fragile sphere spinning through the vast emptiness of space. No, he muttered to himself. He turned and ran back down the steps into the basement apartment. He stood before the massive, humming sculpture. He looked at his watch. It was already past 5 o'clock. A tambourine, Sinclair realized, his heart skipping a beat as he listened to the faint rhythm of the machine. I have to find a tambourine right away. He ran back out to the street, stopping a passerby. Can you help me? Do you know where I can find a tambourine? If in the next few months you notice that there has been a spate of minor catastrophes, or that things are just not going quite right in the world, remember that Edgar Witherspoon's replacement is still learning how to make some precise adjustments. But do not worry too much. His education will not last long, and soon he will have the hang of it. And then, perhaps, you might give a quiet word of thanks to a physician whose practice now extends to the well-being of the entire planet. Dr. Jeremy Sinclair offers a unique form of preventative medicine, found only in the twilight zone of human existence. The curious case of Edgar Witherspoon. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall, leaded glass windows of Dr. Jeremy Sinclair's psychiatric office, casting long, orderly shadows across the polished mahogany desk. Dr. Sinclair, a man who took immense pride in the neatness of his files, the precision of his diagnoses, and the overall stability of his clinical practice, leaned back in his leather chair. Across from him sat Cynthia, a young woman whose face was a portrait of tightly wound anxiety. She clutched her handbag as if it were a life preserver in a stormy sea. She insisted that her uncle was crazy. That was the word she used along with several others. She called him a loony, a nutcase, and a genuine wacko. According to Cynthia, Uncle Edgar was always looking for things. His life had devolved into an endless, frantic scavenger hunt for the most mundane and inexplicable items. One day he was searching for 3 paper clips, and the next a chrome coat hanger. On another afternoon, he became absolutely obsessed with finding exactly 1 patent leather tap shoe. He did not look for these things in respectable shops. Instead, he rummaged through neighborhood trash cans, spent hours at local garbage dumps, and constantly bothered the other tenants in his apartment building. One day his grand quest was for bicycle spokes. Then it was baseball cards. Naturally, the bewildered tenants did not complain to Edgar. They complained to Cynthia. Her uncle refused to let anyone into his apartment, not even his own niece. The small space was reputedly filled to the ceiling with all the junk he had been collecting. Cynthia was convinced it was a fire trap. She worried that he would hurt himself or worse, cause a disaster that would harm innocent people, namely her. She pleaded with Dr. Sinclair, begging him to intervene. She explained that just yesterday, her uncle had desperately demanded a yo-yo, insisting he must have it by 6 o'clock. The week before that, he had been gathering pieces of broken dolls, specifically heads, arms, and legs. Tears welled in her eyes as she begged the doctor to do something for Edgar's sake, and for theirs. Dr. Sinclair, maintaining his professional yet compassionate demeanor, agreed to visit the apartment building. When he arrived at the brick building, the first person he encountered was Mrs. Milligan, the high-strung landlady. The front door was locked, and when the doctor attempted to ring Edgar's buzzer, nothing happened. Mrs. Milligan explained that the doorbell did not work because Edgar had disconnected it down in the basement. While they were speaking, the basement door creaked open, and a gentle, weathered old man stepped out. He carried a small cardboard box and wore an expression of quiet determination. Mrs. Milligan immediately called out to him, but Edgar, lost in his own thoughts, looked right past her. He thanked her anyway but announced that he had already found a brass thimble, mistaking the doctor for a tenant named Mr. Pilchick. When Dr. Sinclair introduced himself, offering his professional hand, Edgar politely brushed him off, stating that he would have to talk some other time because he was currently on a strict schedule to find a doll's head. Watching the elderly man walk away, Dr. Sinclair felt a familiar wave of clinical pity. To the psychiatrist, Edgar Witherspoon was just another old man living in a private world of irrational urgencies, an all too common sight in his line of work. Yet, as the doctor would soon discover, Edgar was a most uncommon old man, possessing a secret that reached out to the 4 corners of the earth. A few days later, Dr. Sinclair managed to secure a brief audience with Edgar outside his apartment. The doctor tried to appeal to his sense of family, mentioning that Cynthia was deeply worried about him. Edgar, ever polite, smiled and remarked that Cynthia was a very nice woman and that the doctor should tell her not to worry. He suggested this as a simple solution, thanked the doctor for coming, and turned to leave, stating he had to get on with his work. Intrigued, Dr. Sinclair asked him about this work. Edgar teased him, asking if the doctor would like to know what it was. When Sinclair replied in the affirmative, Edgar chuckled and told him it was the wrong answer. Suddenly shifting his focus, Edgar peered around and asked if the doctor saw a doll's head anywhere. Sinclair pointed to a nearby discard. Anyway, Mr. Pilchick, but I already found a brass thimble. Dr. Sinclair stepped closer, peering into the dim alcove. An elderly man with a wild halo of white hair and bright, intensely focused blue eyes was kneeling on the concrete floor, examining a pile of discarded cardboard boxes. He wore a faded cardigan sweater that had seen better days, and his hands were smudged with soot. You are not Mr. Pilchick, the old man said, looking up and blinking in the low light. No, Dr. Sinclair said gently, extending a hand to help the elderly man to his feet. I am Dr. Jeremy Sinclair. May I talk to you, Mr. Witherspoon? Or perhaps Mr. Pilchick is what you prefer. Some other time, perhaps, Edgar Witherspoon said, brushing the dust from his trousers and ignoring the offered hand with a polite but distracted nod. I have to look for a doll's head. It is very urgent, you see. Dr. Sinclair watched as the old man scurried past him, his eyes scanning the floor with a desperate, singular focus. To a man of science like Jeremy Sinclair, it was an all-too-common sight. He had spent his entire career treating patients lost in the private worlds of their own irrational urgencies, building elaborate fortresses of delusion to protect themselves from the overwhelming chaos of reality. But Edgar Witherspoon was a most uncommon old man. He was not a man running from the world. Rather, he was a man who believed the world was running on his shoulders. He possessed a secret that reached out to the four corners of the earth, a delicate, terrifying truth that the good doctor was about to discover. Dr. Sinclair followed Edgar into the cluttered warmth of the basement hallway. Your niece, Cynthia, she worries about you very much, Mr. Witherspoon. She is a very nice woman, and she only wants what is best for you. Edgar stopped, a warm, genuine smile breaking across his wrinkled face. Oh, Cynthia is a darling, he said. A very nice woman indeed. Please, tell her not to worry. I am perfectly fine, and my work is going splendidly. See? A simple solution, Edgar continued. He knocked firmly. Inside, Edgar's voice told him to go away, claiming he was not home. Sinclair identified himself, reminding him of their meeting last week. Edgar humorously replied that he had not been home last week either. Losing his patience, Dr. Sinclair warned that he could legally force Edgar to open the door. Reluctantly, the old man unlocked the deadbolts and peeked out. He called the doctor a curious one. When Sinclair asked if he meant odd, Edgar clarified that he meant nosy. Sinclair smiled, explaining that he was paid to be nosy or curious. Edgar found this amusing, wondering if the hours were good. Deciding to get straight to the point, Dr. Sinclair asked why Edgar collected dolls' heads, shoes, and paperclips. Edgar deadpanned that he simply could not afford Rembrandts. Before the doctor could press further, Edgar tried to bid him goodbye, but Sinclair insisted on being invited in, suggesting that a voluntary conversation would be much better than a forced legal intervention. With a sigh of resignation, Edgar opened the door fully, warning the doctor to be very, very careful where he walked. Stepping over the threshold, Dr. Sinclair froze. The apartment was a breathtaking, chaotic labyrinth. Towering structures of wire, wood, metal, and plastic snaked throughout the rooms. Thousands of unrelated objects were suspended in a delicate, interlocking web. Old bicycle wheels turned slowly, connected by typewriter ribbons to dangling forks, light bulbs, and clocks. It was a massive, kinetic sculpture of junk. Edgar walked to a central hub of the contraption and made a tiny adjustment to a swinging pendulum. He asked how it looked, calling the doctor by a playful nickname. Sinclair, completely overwhelmed, confessed that it was very interesting but asked what it actually was. Edgar looked at him with utmost sincerity and explained that this machine was the only thing keeping the world from going poof. Dr. Sinclair tried to process this. He asked Edgar to clarify if this collection of trash was truly what prevented global destruction. Edgar nodded, admitting that it was not an easy task, as many of the required items were nearly impossible to find. He asked Sinclair where one would even begin to look for an old skate key. When Sinclair admitted he could not imagine, Edgar proudly revealed that he had found one anyway. Realizing Edgar's engineering background, Sinclair asked if he had a business card, which Edgar happily provided. Edgar sat down and began to explain his history. He had once been a highly successful engineer, earning a great deal of money. After retiring, he found that life was incredibly boring, which he considered the worst mistake he had ever made. And then, he said, the voice spoke to him. Sinclair's professional instincts flared. He asked if Edgar heard voices. Edgar, completely unfazed, asked if the doctor heard them too, eagerly wanting to share his experience. He described sitting in the park one afternoon, feeding the pigeons, when a voice suddenly spoke to him. The voice had asked him if he had ever been to England. When Edgar replied that he had not, the voice explained that, in the heart of the great clock of Westminster, known as Big Ben, there is a pendulum that dictates how fast the clock ticks. At the bottom of that pendulum, on top of the massive weight, sits a small stack of pennies. Every so often, the caretakers take a penny off to speed the clock up, or add one to slow it down. The tiny weight of those pennies changes the balance just enough to keep the entire massive mechanism running perfectly. Understanding the metaphor, Dr. Sinclair asked if Edgar had built some kind of clock. Edgar laughed, pointing out that a $3 clock from any drugstore kept perfect time, so there was no need to build one. Instead, the voice had explained to him that the world is a chaotic, noisy place filled with little wars, big wars, volcanoes, storms, and tornadoes. To keep the world from spinning out of control or going poof, someone had to build a balancing mechanism. What the pennies did for Big Ben, Edgar's machine did for the entire planet. When Sinclair asked who Edgar believed the voice belonged to, Edgar admitted that sometimes he thought it was God, but then reasoned that God would probably have a much deeper voice. He offered the doctor a prune, which Sinclair politely declined, preparing to leave. As the doctor navigated his way out, Edgar warned him to be careful, reiterating that he had no idea how the machine actually worked, only that the voice told him what it needed, and he went out to get it. Before Sinclair left, Edgar asked if he would bring him an old tuba if he ran across one, explaining he needed it in exactly 2 hours. Despite Edgar's gentle nature, Cynthia remained terrified of the potential danger. She coordinated with the authorities, and a few days later, Edgar was taken to a psychiatric facility for a 3-day observation period. Sinclair visited him in his holding room. Edgar pleaded with the doctor, explaining that 3 days was far too long for him to be away. He insisted that the machine had to be constantly maintained and kept in perfect balance. Dr. Sinclair tried to reason with him, explaining that hearing voices was not normal or healthy. Edgar countered, pointing out that Sinclair was currently hearing his voice, and asked what the difference was between a sane man hearing a crazy voice and a crazy man hearing a sane voice. He suggested that perhaps the truth lay somewhere in the middle. With a sudden look of horror, Edgar looked at his watch, which read exactly 3:17. He gasped, declaring that Tatoa was gone. When Sinclair asked what Tatoa was, Edgar explained it was a tiny island in the South Pacific. He lamented that, at exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, Tatoa had become history because the machine had not been balanced. He begged Sinclair to keep Cynthia away from his apartment, warning that it would take him days to clean up the mess if she disturbed it. After Edgar was led away, Dr. Sinclair returned to his office, feeling a heavy exhaustion. He tried to rationalize Edgar's behavior, viewing it as a classic delusion of grandeur born from a retired man feeling useless. Cynthia joined him, thanking him and asking him to ensure her uncle was well cared for. As they talked, the office radio played softly in the background. The news anchor reported on a Congressional Transport Act, and then, in a sudden turn of events, announced that a massive tidal wave in the South Pacific had completely destroyed the tiny island of Tatoa. The anchor promised more details in an hour. Dr. Sinclair froze. The name of the island echoed in his mind. He quickly asked his assistant, Miss Walker, to call the newspaper to verify the story. When she confirmed, reported, though residents described the event as sudden and unsettling. Dr. Sinclair froze, his hand hovering over the radio dial. He stared at the small speaker, his mind racing. Santa Barbara, a minor tremor, yesterday afternoon. He shook his head violently, dismissing the thought. It was a coincidence. A ridiculous, mathematically inevitable coincidence. There were thousands of minor earthquakes around the world every day. It had nothing to do with a blonde doll's head or an old man in a basement. 2 days later, Dr. Sinclair stood once again outside the heavy wooden door of apartment B. The hallway felt colder this time, and the metallic hum from within seemed louder, more insistent. He knocked on the door, louder and more authoritative than before. Mr. Witherspoon, he called out. Go away, a voice muffled by the thick wood replied. I am not home. It is Dr. Sinclair, the psychiatrist said, leaning closer to the door. I was here last week. You remember me, don't you? Sorry, the voice replied, sounding remarkably cheerful. I wasn't home last week either. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, adopting his most professional, commanding tone. I could legally force you to open this door to me. I have the authority to bring in the authorities for a wellness check. Is that what you want? There was a long silence from inside the apartment. Then, the sound of several deadbolts sliding back echoed through the hallway. The door opened a crack, revealing Edgar's face. You are a curious one, Edgar said, his blue eyes narrowing slightly as he looked at the doctor. Odd, you mean? Dr. Sinclair asked, offering a dry smile. I mean nosy, Edgar said plainly. I am paid to be nosy, Dr. Sinclair replied, stepping forward. Curious, it is my job to understand how people think. Really? Edgar asked, opening the door a bit wider. Don't you think that is odd? Most people are curious for nothing. They spend their lives wondering about things that do not matter, while ignoring the things that do. But you get paid for it. That is very nice for you. Are the hours good? Mr. could find a ping-pong ball and place it in the mechanism by 7:13, the immediate problem would be solved. He smiled, told the doctor not to take any wooden nickels, and walked out the door, leaving Sinclair completely alone. Dr. Sinclair stared at the towering, humming monument of junk. The responsibility of the entire planet now rested squarely on his shoulders. He looked at his watch. The minutes were ticking away towards 7:13. With a deep breath, Dr. Sinclair ran out into the street, frantically asking passers-by if they had a tambourine, or if they knew where he could find one right away. Should you notice a sudden spate of global catastrophes or find that things in the world are simply not going right, do not worry. It only means that Edgar Witherspoon's replacement is still learning how to make the necessary, precise adjustments. In time, the doctor will master his new practice, providing a very unique brand of preventative medicine to keep our fragile world from going poof. The afternoon light that filtered through the heavy Venetian blinds of Dr. Jeremy Sinclair's office was always the color of old parchment. It was a room designed to soothe the fractured geometry of the human mind, filled with the soft scent of leather-bound volumes, the gentle ticking of a mahogany grandfather clock, and the muted hum of the city traffic far below. Dr. Sinclair sat behind his heavy oak desk, rubbing his temples. He was a man who had dedicated his life to the neat categorizations of clinical psychiatry, believing that every human eccentricity could be mapped, catalogued, and eventually brought back into alignment with the predictable world. But the predictable world had a way of fraying at the edges. On the other side of his desk sat Mrs. Milligan, the landlady of a modest tenement building on the north side of the city. She was a woman who seemed to exist in a permanent state of high vibration, her fingers clutching a patent leather handbag as if it were a life preserver. Her voice, when she spoke, had the sharp, metallic ring of a rusty hinge. "He is crazy, doctor," she said, her voice rising to a pitch that made the grandfather clock seem to tick a little faster. "That is exactly what he is. A loony, a nutcase, a genuine wacko. I do not use those terms lightly, mind you, but there is no other way to describe my tenant, Mr. Edgar Witherspoon. He is always looking for things. And I do not mean normal things like a misplaced set of keys or a pair of reading glasses. No, he is looking for 3 paper clips or a chrome coat hanger. Or one single patent leather tap shoe. Who on earth needs just one tap shoe? Doctor?" Dr. Sinclair offered a patient, practiced smile, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the polished wood of his desk. "Many elderly individuals find solace in small collections, Mrs. Milligan. It gives them a sense of order, a hobby to fill the quiet hours of retirement." "A hobby?" Mrs. Milligan let out a sharp, mocking laugh that sounded like a startled bird. "If only it were a hobby. He rummages through trash cans, doctor. He goes to garbage dumps, digging through the filth of the city like a common raccoon. And he is always bothering my other tenants. One day he is begging them for bicycle spokes. Then it is baseball cards. And who do the tenants complain to when they are woken up in the middle of the night by a sweet old man asking for a wooden clothespin? Yours truly, that is who. They come to me, demanding that I do something about the lunatic in the basement." She paused, taking a long, ragged breath, before continuing her indictment. "And to make matters worse, he will not let anybody into his apartment. Not even his own niece, Cynthia, who is the sweetest girl you could ever hope to meet. She brings him groceries, she tries to clean up after him, and he just shuts the door in her face. All that junk he is collecting, doctor, it is a fire trap. If a single spark were to catch in that basement, the whole building would go up like a dry pine cone. He could hurt himself, and he could hurt other people. Namely me. I am the one who owns the building, and I am the one who would be held responsible. He needs your help, doctor." Dr. Sinclair nodded slowly, making a brief, elegant note on a yellow legal pad. "I understand your concern, Mrs. Milligan. It is indeed troubling when an individual's behavior begins to impact the safety and peace of those around him. But we must be careful not to pathologize simple eccentricity." "Eccentricity?" Mrs. Milligan scoffed, leaning even closer across the desk. "Yesterday he wanted a yo-yo. He came to my door, absolutely frantic, claiming he had to have a yo-yo by 6 o'clock in the evening. Not 5 minutes after, not 20 minutes before, but exactly 6 o'clock. And last week it was pieces of broken dolls. He was begging the neighborhood children for doll parts. Heads, arms, legs. Can you imagine the horror of walking down the hallway and seeing an old man carrying a bag full of severed plastic doll limbs? Please do something, doctor. Please, for his sake. And for ours, of course." Dr. Sinclair sighed, the weight of his profession pressing down on his shoulders. He stood up, smoothing his jacket. "Very well, Mrs. Milligan. I will pay a visit to Mr. Witherspoon. I cannot make any promises, but I will evaluate his state of mind and see if some form of intervention is necessary." "Oh, thank goodness," Mrs. Milligan said, rising from her chair and adjusting her coat. "But I must warn you, his doorbell does not work." Dr. Sinclair raised an eyebrow. A broken doorbell is not uncommon in older buildings. "Ah," Mrs. Milligan said with a knowing nod. "I think he disconnected it himself. Down there, in the basement, he does not want anyone interrupting whatever it is he is doing." The basement of the tenement building was a subterranean labyrinth of exposed pipes, concrete walls, and the low, rumbling groan of the furnace. Dr. Sinclair walked slowly down the dimly lit hallway, the smell of damp earth and old coal dust filling his nose. He reached the door marked with the letter B, where a small brass plate bore the name Witherspoon. As Mrs. Milligan had warned, the doorbell button was dead, offering no resistance when pressed. Dr. Sinclair knocked firmly on the heavy wooden door. There was no answer, only a strange, rhythmic clicking sound from within, accompanied by a faint, metallic hum. He turned to walk back toward the stairs, wondering if he should return at a more conventional hour, when he heard a soft rustling sound coming from a small alcove near the coal chute. "Oh, thank you," a voice murmured from the shadows. "Thanks, and lose 10 seconds in a year. No, this is much bigger than a clock." The voice said to me, "Edgar, the world is a funny place. There are little wars here, big wars there, volcanoes going off, storms, tornadoes, a terrific amount of noise and bother. Humans are always pushing the world to the brink of destruction. You have to build something that will keep the world from going too far. Something that will keep it from going poof. What the pennies do for Big Ben, Edgar, this machine does for the world." Dr. Sinclair stared at the old man, feeling a strange mixture of awe and pity. "And who do you think it is who is speaking to you, Mr. Witherspoon?" Edgar shrugged, a look of mild puzzlement on his face. "Well, sometimes I think it is God," he said. "And then I think, no, God would have a much deeper voice like a grand pipe organ. This voice is very quiet, very polite. Would you care for a prune, Doctor?" "Oh, no, thank you," Dr. Sinclair said, backing toward the door. "I was just leaving." "But you have just arrived," Edgar said, reaching for a small wooden bowl filled with dried fruit. "Oh, careful," he cried out suddenly as the doctor's coat brushed against a hanging wire. Dr. Sinclair froze, his heart skipping a beat. "I have no idea how the thing works," Edgar said, his voice soft and earnest. "All I know is that the voice tells me what it needs and I get it. If I don't, things start to go wrong. Very wrong. Goodbye, Mr. Witherspoon," Dr. Sinclair said, his hand finding the doorknob. "You keep up the good work. We could perhaps call it a sculpture." "Yes, a kinetic sculpture. Would that make your niece happy?" "What?" Edgar asked, looking confused. "Oh no, she doesn't understand. She thinks I am just hoarding junk. If you happen to run across an old tuba, would you bring it by?" Edgar called out as the doctor opened the door. "I need it in 2 hours. The current one is losing its resonance, and the atmosphere in Europe is getting very tense." Dr. Sinclair did not answer. He stepped out into the hallway and let the door shut behind him, his mind swirling with a sense of profound unease. The next morning, the hallway of the psychiatric evaluation wing at the city hospital was sterile and quiet. Cynthia stood beside Dr. Sinclair, her face pale, clapping his hands together with a cheerful grin. "Thanks for coming all this way, Doctor. It has been a pleasure meeting you. Truly. But I really must get on with my work." "Your work?" Dr. Sinclair asked, his curiosity piqued despite his professional detachment. He looked at the old man's soot-stained hands and the intense spark of intelligence in his eyes. "I bet you would like to know what it is, wouldn't you?" Edgar said, leaning in and whispering as if sharing a grand secret. "Yes," Dr. Sinclair admitted, nodding. "I would." "Wrong answer," Edgar said with a playful wag of his finger. "If I told you, you would only think I was mad. And then we would have to spend the whole afternoon arguing about sanity, and I simply do not have the time. You see a doll's head here anywhere?" Dr. Sinclair looked around the cluttered hallway, his eyes landing on a cardboard box near the laundry tubs. "You mean like that one?" he asked, pointing to a plastic head peeking out from under a pile of newspapers. Edgar hurried over, picking it up and examining it with a critical eye. He shook his head in disappointment. "Ah, too big," he muttered. "Also, it is a brunette. I need a blonde doll's head, and I need it in 5 minutes." Dr. Sinclair frowned, his clinical mind trying to find a thread of logic. "And what for Mr. Witherspoon? Why is a blonde doll's head so important right now?" Edgar looked at him with an expression of profound gravity, his playful demeanor vanishing in an instant. "You want Santa Barbara to fall into the ocean?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Because if I do not find that blonde doll's head and place it on the counterweight within 5 minutes, that is exactly what will happen. Now stand aside, sir. Stand aside. Without waiting for a reply, Edgar darted past the doctor, his eyes searching every nook and cranny of the basement with a feverish intensity. Dr. Sinclair stood frozen for a moment, watching the old man disappear around a corner. He shook his head, a sense of deep pity washing over him. It was a classic delusion of grandeur, a desperate attempt by a retired, lonely man to feel important, to believe that his actions had global significance. A sudden, triumphant shout echoed from the far end of the hallway. Woohoo! Just in the nick of time. No time to lose. Dr. Sinclair walked toward the sound, finding Edgar standing before a heavy iron door that led into his private apartment. The old man was clutching a small, dirty blonde doll's head in his hand, his face flushed with a mixture of exhaustion and pure relief. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, his voice firm but gentle. Edgar turned, looking at the doctor with an apologetic smile. I am sorry, doctor. I shouldn't be rude. You have come all this way to see me, and I have been ignoring you. May I come in? Dr. Sinclair asked, gesturing toward the door. Edgar's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of nervous caution. Oh, and it was so nice, a pleasure meeting you, doctor. Tell my niece hello for me. But now, if you will excuse me, I have got to stop the shaking in Santa Barbara. With a swift, practiced movement, Edgar slipped inside his apartment, leaving Dr. Sinclair standing alone in the dim hallway. Just before the heavy door clicked shut, Edgar's hand reappeared, holding a small paper bag. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair called out. On your way out, could you dump this? Edgar's voice came from behind the closing door, accompanied by the rustle of the paper bag being placed on a nearby shelf. The next morning, the sun was shining brightly, casting a cheerful light over the city. But inside Dr. Sinclair's office, the mood was far more somber. Cynthia, Edgar's niece, sat in the chair previously occupied by Mrs. Milligan. She was a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor, but her face was etched with worry. Good afternoon, doctor, Cynthia said, her voice soft and anxious. Did you see Uncle Edgar? Yes, this morning, Dr. Sinclair replied, leaning back in his chair and tapping his pen against his desk. Well, Cynthia asked, leaning forward. What do you think? I could not exactly call it a long conversation, Dr. Sinclair admitted, choosing his words carefully. But it was long enough to realize that he is. Absolutely. Cynthia finished the sentence for him, her shoulders slumping. He is losing his grip on reality. Isn't he? On the other hand, Dr. Sinclair said, wanting to offer some comfort, Mr. Witherspoon appears happy and harmless. He does not seem to pose any immediate threat to himself or others. Harmless? Cynthia repeated, her voice rising slightly with frustration. Doctor, he pesters strangers on the street. He runs after garbage trucks like a stray dog. That is far from harmless. Just the other day, somebody saw him take a baby's bottle right out of its carriage. I am terrified that he will get arrested next time. He is an old man, doctor. He wouldn't survive a night in a jail cell. I will sign anything, cooperate in any way I can, if it means getting him the help he needs. Dr. Sinclair sighed, looking at the genuine concern in the young woman's eyes. All right, he said softly. Maybe I will have another chat with him. A longer one this time. See if I can understand the root of his behavior. Before Cynthia could respond, a strange, distant sound echoed through the office. It was a faint, low vibration, like a tremor deep within the earth. Did you hear that? Dr. Sinclair asked, sitting up straight and looking around the room. What? Cynthia asked, looking confused. There was something about a... Dr. Sinclair paused, shaking his head. He looked down at his desk, where a cup of coffee remained perfectly still, its surface undisturbed. Sorry, it was nothing. I do not know what I was thinking. I will call you. As soon as I can, Cynthia. Thank you very much, doctor, Cynthia said, rising and giving him a grateful smile. After she left, Dr. Sinclair reached for the small radio on his desk, turning the dial to a local news station. The smooth, monotonous voice of the announcer filled the room. Activity could be a problem, the announcer said. Acid rain is affecting the northern lakes even more than scientists previously estimated, leading to concerns about the local fish populations. In other news, emergency services are still cleaning up after the minor tremor that shook the Santa Barbara area late yesterday afternoon. Fortunately, no major injuries have been reported. With a gasp of fright. Dr. Sinclair, you scared the life out of me. What are you doing here? You didn't touch it, did you? Dr. Sinclair gasped, lunging forward and gently placing his hands around the delicate structure of the machine. You haven't touched anything or moved anything else? Not yet, Mrs. Milligan said, her eyes narrowing with confusion. Why? What is the matter with you, doctor? Because, Dr. Sinclair said, his mind racing to find an explanation that wouldn't make him sound as mad as Edgar, because this is the creation of a highly disordered mind. And by studying it, analyzing it just exactly as he left it, I can come to a deeper insight into Mr. Witherspoon's psychological problems. If we move even a single piece, we disrupt the diagnostic integrity of the entire system. Mrs. Milligan scoffed, folding her arms. He is a loony, doctor. What else do you have to know? I cannot rent this place out with all this garbage in it. It has to go. All right, Dr. Sinclair said, his voice desperate. I will rent it. You? Mrs. Milligan asked, her jaw dropping. Yes, Dr. Sinclair said, nodding frantically. I will rent the apartment, just as it is. I will give you double what you are currently getting for it. I will be up to your office later this afternoon with the check. Just promise me you won't touch anything. Not a wire, not a paperclip. Do we have an agreement, Mrs. Milligan? Mrs. Milligan stared at him, her eyes widening at the mention of double rent. Well, she said, her voice softening into a greedy smile. If you want to pay for a room full of trash, that is your business, doctor. We have an agreement. Thank you, Mrs. Milligan, Dr. Sinclair said, letting out a long, shuddering sigh of relief. Before she could leave, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Miss Walker appeared in the doorway, breathless and pale. Doctor, she gasped. He has escaped. Who? Mrs. Milligan asked. Everything is going to be fine, Dr. Sinclair said, waving a hand dismissively as he saw a familiar figure slip past Miss Walker into the room. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair cried. Should I call the cops? Mrs. Milligan asked, looking alarmed. No, Dr. Sinclair said. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, choosing to ignore the deflection. Why do you collect dolls' heads, shoes, and paperclips? What is the purpose of all this junk? Edgar looked at him with a mischievous glint in his eye. I cannot afford Rembrandts, he said simply. What? Dr. Sinclair asked, momentarily thrown off balance by the non sequitur. Oh no, Edgar said, his eyes suddenly darting to a clock on his wall. Oh no, not again. As usual, doctor, it has been lovely talking to you. Please do not call again. I may have to, Dr. Sinclair said, placing his foot in the doorway before Edgar could shut it. The next time it might not be so lovely, Mr. Witherspoon. You must understand that your family and your landlady are very concerned. If you do not cooperate, they may take legal steps to have you committed to an institution. Edgar stared at him, the mischief fading from his eyes, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. Wouldn't you rather invite me in of your own free will? Dr. Sinclair asked gently. Let me see what you are working on. Let me understand. Edgar looked down at the doctor's foot, then up at his face. He sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the entire world. You must, he whispered. You must indeed, but be very, very careful where you walk. The door opened fully, and Dr. Sinclair stepped inside. Nothing in his years of study, nothing in his work at the state's most prestigious psychiatric hospitals, could have prepared him for the sight that greeted him. The apartment was not a home. It was a living, breathing machine. A vast, incredibly complex kinetic sculpture filled the entire living room, stretching from floor to ceiling and extending into the kitchen and hallway. It was a labyrinth of wire, bicycle wheels, old clocks, copper tubing, and discarded household items. A metal typewriter carriage slid back and forth on a track of copper wire, striking a small silver bell every 12 seconds. Suspended from the ceiling, a rusty tuba hung by a thick rope, its bell positioned over a series of hanging spoons that clinked softly in the draft. A single patent leather tap shoe was attached to a wooden lever, tapping rhythmically against an empty coffee can. In the center of this chaotic symphony, a blonde doll's head sat atop a small wooden platform, counterbalanced by a brass thimble and 3 paper clips. The entire contraption hummed, clicked, and whirled with a strange, hypnotic rhythm that felt less like mechanical movement and more like a heartbeat. "How is it, Cloushade?" Edgar asked, looking at the doctor with a mixture of pride and anxiety. Dr. Sinclair stood frozen, his eyes darting from one bizarre connection to another. "It is very interesting, Mr. Witherspoon," he managed to say, his professional composure barely holding together. What is it? This?" Edgar asked, gesturing to the entire room with a sweep of his arm. "This is the only thing that keeps the world from going poof." Dr. Sinclair blinked, taking a deep breath. "Now, let me understand you clearly, Mr. Witherspoon. You say that this machine is what keeps the world from going poof." Edgar nodded solemnly. "And it is not easy, let me tell you. Most things are nearly impossible to find. The balance is so delicate, Doctor. The slightest change in atmospheric pressure, a shift in the tectonic plates, a rise in human conflict, and the machine must be adjusted immediately. Every object has its own unique resonance, its own weight in the grand design. Where would you look for a skate key?" "Oh, I cannot imagine," Dr. Sinclair said, his voice barely a whisper as he stared at a rusty key hanging from a blue ribbon. "I found one, though," Edgar said, a brief flash of pride returning to his face. "You think that is crazy? Well, you wouldn't by any chance have a business card, would you?" Dr. Sinclair reached into his pocket, his movements slow and deliberate. "Oh yes, of course," he said, pulling out a small white card and handing it to the old man. Edgar took it, his eyes lighting up. "That was an easy one," he said, placing the card carefully beneath a small lead weight on a wooden balance beam. Instantly, the tapping of the patent leather shoe slowed down, matching the steady rhythm of a human pulse. "Well," Dr. Sinclair said, feeling a sudden, overwhelming urge to leave the room. "I won't take up any more of your time. I have seen more than enough. I used to be an engineer," Edgar said quietly, his voice carrying a note of nostalgia. "I designed bridges, power plants, systems that kept cities running. I earned lots of money. Then I retired. It was the worst mistake I ever made. Life was so damned boring, Doctor. No problems to solve, no systems to maintain. Just waiting for the end. And then one day the voice spoke to me." Dr. Sinclair, who had been about to step toward the door, stopped. "Oh," he said, his professional curiosity returning. "You also hear voices?" "You too?" Edgar asked, his eyes widening with delight. "Please tell me about it." No, Dr. Sinclair corrected quickly. "I do not hear voices. But as a psychiatrist, I study those who do. Please tell me about yours." "I was sitting in the park one day, feeding the pigeons," Edgar said, his eyes looking far beyond the walls of his basement apartment. "The sun was warm, and I was wondering if this was all there was left for me. And suddenly, there it was. The voice. It didn't come from the sky or from the trees. It came from right inside my head, but it wasn't my voice. Edgar," it said, "have you ever been to England?" "And what did you say?" Dr. Sinclair asked. "I said no," Edgar replied. "I asked why. But that is what the voice asked me." "Edgar," it said, "in the heart of Big Ben, there is a pendulum that tells the great clock how fast to tick. At the bottom of that pendulum, on top of the big weight, there is a small stack of pennies. Every so often, The keepers of the clock take 1 penny off, and the clock speeds up. Or they put 1 penny on, and the clock slows down. The pennies change the balance just a tiny bit, but it is enough to keep the whole magnificent mechanism running perfectly. Edgar paused, looking at the doctor to see if he was following. So, doctor, what you have here in this room is some kind of clock. Dr. Sinclair looked at the sprawling mass of junk. Of course not, Edgar said before the doctor could answer. Why on earth would I build a clock? You can buy a clock for $3 at any drugstore, and it won't. Milligan, let us take a breath. Tell me about your tenant. Uncle Edgar, is it? Edgar Witherspoon, she said, spitting the name out as if it were a sour lemon. He is always looking for things, and not normal things, mind you. Not a lost set of keys or a pair of reading glasses. No, he is looking for 3 paper clips of a specific size, or a chrome coat hanger, or 1 single patent leather tap shoe. He rummages through the trash cans on the street. He goes to the municipal garbage dumps and sifts through the filth like he is digging for gold. He is constantly bothering my other tenants, asking them for the strangest junk. Jeremy made a neat, cursive note on his pad. Obsessive-compulsive hoarding behavior? Go on, Mrs. Milligan, he murmured. One day it is bicycle spokes, she continued, waving her hand in the air. The next day it is baseball cards from 1952. And who do the tenants complain to? Yours truly, of course. I am the one who has to listen to them. And to make matters worse, he won't let anybody into his apartment. Not a soul. Not even his own niece, Cynthia, who is the sweetest girl and worries herself to death over him. All that junk he is collecting in there, doctor, it is a fire trap. He could hurt himself. He could hurt other people. Namely me. He needs your help, doctor. Professional help. Jeremy nodded slowly, his expression a mask of clinical empathy. Hoarding can indeed present safety hazards. But is he a danger to himself or others in a physical sense? Has he shown any signs of aggression? Aggression? Mrs. Milligan scoffed. No, he is not aggressive. He is just bizarre. Yesterday he came knocking on my door, looking terribly anxious, wanting a yo-yo. He said he had to have it by 6 o'clock in the evening. 6 o'clock sharp. And last week it was pieces of broken dolls. Doll heads, doll arms, doll legs. Can you imagine? A grown man running around asking for broken doll parts? Please do something, doctor. Please, for his sake. And ours, of course. I will certainly look into the matter, Mrs. Milligan, Jeremy said, rising from his chair to signal the end of the consultation. I will pay a visit to Mr. Witherspoon and conduct an informal evaluation. Thank you, doctor, Mrs. Milligan said, standing up and adjusting, her hands trembling as she signed a set of admission forms. Cynthia, please do not do this to me. Edgar's voice pleaded from a nearby bench, where he sat flanked by 2 orderly guards. Uncle Edgar. Please, Cynthia said, tears welling in her eyes. It is just for 3 days. Just 3 days while they observe you and make sure you are healthy. It is too long, Edgar said, his voice laced with a desperate panic that Dr. Sinclair had not seen before. It has to be maintained, Cynthia. The machine must be kept in balance. If it stops, if even one piece is moved, the consequences will be catastrophic. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair said, stepping forward and speaking in his most reassuring, clinical voice. You hear voices. That is not normal. You must understand that. We want to help you find peace. Edgar looked up at him, his blue eyes flashing with a sudden, sharp clarity. You hear voices too, doctor, he said. No, Dr. Sinclair countered gently. Healthy people do not hear voices. But you hear mine right now, don't you? Edgar asked. That is not the same thing, Dr. Sinclair said, momentarily taken aback. Why? Edgar demanded. What is the difference between a sane man hearing a crazy voice and a crazy man hearing a sane voice? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Maybe we are both just trying to make sense of a world that is far too loud. You do not understand the risk you are taking by keeping me here. Doctor. I knew it. There goes Tatoa. Dr. Sinclair frowned. What is Tatoa? A tiny island in the South Pacific, Edgar said, his voice suddenly turning cold and hollow. What time is it, Doctor? Dr. Sinclair glanced at his wristwatch. It is 3:17 in the afternoon, he said. At 3:17 in the afternoon, Tatoa became history because of you, Edgar said, leaning back against the bench, his face pale and lifeless. Please let me go. There is still time to save the rest. It will take me days to clean up this mess if the machine stops completely. Keep Mrs. Milligan away from it. Remember Tatoa, Doctor. Remember Tatoa. Dr. Sinclair watched as the orderlies gently led Edgar down the hallway toward the observation ward. He turned to Cynthia, who was wiping a tear from her cheek. It is a classic case, Dr. Sinclair said, though his own voice sounded hollow to his ears. A retired, lonely man, feeling useless in a world that has passed him by. He created this delusion of grandeur to convince himself that he is vital to the world's survival. It is a defense mechanism, Cynthia. Poor Uncle Edgar, Cynthia whispered. You will take good care of him, won't you, Doctor? Of course we will, Dr. Sinclair said. An hour later, Dr. Sinclair sat in his office, the yellow legal pad before him remaining blank. He could not focus on his notes. His mind kept returning to the image of Edgar Witherspoon, his wild white hair, and the desperate pleading in his eyes. He reached over and turned on the radio, hoping the news would provide a distraction. The Middle East stalemate continues as diplomatic efforts show little progress. The announcer's voice droned. In domestic news, Congress has passed the new Transportation Act after a lengthy debate. And in the South Pacific, reports are coming in that the tiny island of Tatoa has been completely destroyed by a sudden, massive tidal wave. Details on this tragedy and all the news of the hour will follow in our main broadcast. Dr. Sinclair froze. His breath caught in his throat, and the pen slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the desk. Did he say Tatoa? He whispered to the empty room. He lunged for the telephone, his fingers dialing the operator with frantic speed. Yes, the number for the Daily Chronicle news desk, please. Yes, thank you. The phone rang twice before a harried voice answered. News desk. Hello, Dr. Sinclair said, his voice shaking. I want to check on a news story. I just heard something on the radio about a tidal wave destroying an island in the South Pacific. Tatoa. Yes, that is it. Are there any details? 1,000, the reporter replied. The island was completely submerged. It is a disaster. Really? Dr. Sinclair asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. When did it happen? This afternoon? I mean, exactly what time did the wave hit? The reporter paused, the sound of rustling paper audible over the line. According to the meteorological reports, the seismic event occurred at exactly 3:17 this afternoon, local time. Thank you, Dr. Sinclair whispered, slamming the receiver back onto its cradle. He sat in silence, the walls of his office suddenly feeling very thin, very fragile. The grandfather clock ticked on, but the sound now felt like a countdown. Miss Walker, Dr. Sinclair shouted, lunging toward his office door. Yes, Doctor? His secretary replied, peering into the room with surprise. Tatoa was destroyed at exactly 3:17 this afternoon, Dr. Sinclair said, his eyes wide. Is that bad? Miss Walker asked, looking confused. I mean, it is terrible for the people there, of course, but last week, Santa Barbara was hit by an earthquake. Dr. Sinclair interrupted, his voice rising in panic. I am not taking any more chances. Oh my God, the landlady. She is going to destroy it. Who? Miss Walker asked. The machine, Dr. Sinclair cried. If Mrs. Milligan throws away those paper clips, if she moves that doll's head, get Mr. Witherspoon released immediately. Call the ward. Tell them it was an administrative error. Tell them whatever you have to. Just drive him home yourself. You personally as fast as you can. Dr. Sinclair did not wait for her response. He grabbed his coat and ran out of the office, his heart pounding with a terror he had never known before. 10 minutes later, Dr. Sinclair burst through the front doors of the tenement building, his feet pounding down the concrete stairs into the basement. He rounded the corner and saw the door to apartment be standing wide open. Inside, Mrs. Milligan was standing in the center of the room, a large black garbage bag in her hand. She had already cleared a small table of several copper wires and was reaching toward the main balance beam where the blonde doll's head sat. "Don't touch the thing," Dr. Sinclair screamed, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. Mrs. Milligan jumped, dropping her garbage bag, incomprehensible contraption in the center of his living room. As soon as the doll's head was secured, a tiny, vibrating motor in the center of the machine hummed to a stop, and a series of metal spheres settled into a quiet, rhythmic sway. Edgar let out a massive sigh of relief, wiping his brow with the sleeve of his cardigan. "Mr. Witherspoon," Jeremy said, standing in the doorway, staring at the sheer scale of the chaos before him. Edgar turned, his expression softening. He looked suddenly tired, but peaceful. "I'm sorry, Doctor. I shouldn't be rude. You've come all this way to see me. May I come in?" Jeremy asked, his professional detachment slipping away, replaced by genuine astonishment. The living room of apartment 1B was no longer a living room. It was a living, breathing, kinetic sculpture. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of seemingly unrelated objects were suspended from the ceiling, wired to the walls, and mounted on intricate wooden armatures. There were bicycle wheels spinning slowly, driven by the tiny motors of old alarm clocks. There were spoons dangling from fishing lines, tapping gently against glass bottles half filled with colored water. There were typewriter keys connected to copper wires, rubber bands stretched across wooden pegs, a single black leather tap shoe suspended over a brass frying pan, and countless paper clips chained together like delicate metallic vines. And in the center of it all was the blonde doll's head, bobbing gently on its copper wire, keeping a small brass pendulum in a state of perfect, hypnotic equilibrium. It was a monument to madness, yet there was an undeniable, terrifying beauty to its complexity. It did not look like random clutter. It looked like an equation written in 3 dimensions, using the discarded debris of the city as its variables. "And it was so nice. A pleasure meeting you," Edgar said, his voice bringing Jeremy back to the present. "Tell my niece hello. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to stop the shaking in Santa Barbara." "Mr. Witherspoon," Jeremy began, stepping further into the room, his eyes scanning the dizzying web of wires. Edgar handed him a small, empty cardboard box. "On your way out, could you dump this?" "Thank you so much, Doctor." The next afternoon, Jeremy sat in his office, staring out the window at the gray city skyline. He had spent the morning. "Everything is going to be fine. Mr. Witherspoon, you are back." Edgar Witherspoon walked into his apartment, looking remarkably calm. He was carrying a small suitcase in one hand. He looked at the doctor, then at his landlady, and finally at his beloved machine. "You got a handkerchief?" Edgar asked, looking at Dr. Sinclair. "Oh yes, right away," Dr. Sinclair said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a clean white handkerchief, handing it to the old man. "Thanks," Edgar said, wiping a spot of dust from his forehead. "That lady doctor at the hospital had me dressed so fast. I left mine behind." "Mr. Witherspoon," Dr. Sinclair said, his voice filled with a profound humility, "I do not know how to begin to apologize. Nothing in my training, nothing in my years of study, had prepared me for a case like yours. I was blind, but now I see." "Well, nice meeting you," Edgar said, picking up his suitcase and walking toward the door. "Where are you going?" Dr. Sinclair asked, a sudden panic rising in his chest. "Away," finally, Edgar said with a bright, happy smile. "After 11 years of keeping this world together, I am finally free." "But what about the machine?" Dr. Sinclair asked, gesturing to the whirring, clicking sculpture. "What about the balance?" "The voice spoke to me while I was in your hospital," Edgar explained, his eyes twinkling. It said, "Edgar, have you ever been to Miami?" I said no, but I used to think it would be a nice place to retire. "Go for it," the voice said. "You are off duty, Edgar. You have done your part." You mean all this isn't necessary anymore? Dr. Sinclair asked, a wave of relief washing over him. The world is safe. Sure it is, Edgar said, his tone turning serious. It is absolutely essential. The world still has to be kept in balance, Doctor. It is just that my shift is over. So who is going to keep it in balance? Dr. Sinclair asked, his voice trembling as he looked at the machine. Edgar stopped at the doorway, looking back over his shoulder. And look, he said, pointing to a small, empty wooden cup near the center of the apparatus. It needs adjusting already. That is it. Now, if I can just get a ping-pong ball in there by 7:13 in the evening. Well, I guess we solved that little problem. Dr. Sinclair stared at the empty cup, then at his watch. It was already late in the afternoon. I'd get cracking if I was you, Edgar said with a cheerful wink. Impossible, Dr. Sinclair whispered, his head shaking. I refuse. I am a doctor, a man of science. I cannot spend my life chasing paper clips and ping-pong balls. Jeremy, really, Edgar said, his voice warm and encouraging. You will grow to like it. Give it a chance. It gives your life a wonderful sense of purpose. So long, Doctor. Don't take any wooden nickels. Unless you really need them, of course. With that, Edgar Witherspoon turned and walked down the hallway, his footsteps fading into the quiet of the basement. Mr. Witherspoon, Dr. Sinclair called out, but there was no answer. The apartment was silent, save for the rhythmic clicking of the typewriter carriage and the soft, warning clink of the hanging spoons. The machine was slowing down. The hum was losing its pitch, turning into a low, dangerous growl. Dr. Sinclair looked around the room, his eyes wide with a sudden, terrifying realization. The world was in his hands. No, he muttered, this is madness. But then he remembered Tatoa. He remembered Santa Barbara. A tambourine, he whispered to himself. The voice had mentioned a tambourine earlier. Or was it a ping-pong ball? He ran to the door, peering out into the hallway. Mrs. Milligan was still standing near the stairs, watching him with a look of profound suspicion. I have to find a tambourine right away, Dr. Sinclair shouted to her. Can you help me? Do you know where I can find a tambourine? Mrs. Milligan stared at him, her mouth agape, before turning and scurrying up the stairs as fast as her legs could carry her. Dr. Sinclair turned back into the apartment, his hands shaking as he searched through a pile of cardboard boxes. If in the next few months you notice that there has been a spate of minor catastrophes around the world, or if things are just not going quite right in your neighborhood, remember that Edgar Witherspoon's replacement is still learning how to make some very precise adjustments. But do not worry too much. His education will not last long, and soon he will have the balance down to a science. And then, perhaps, you might give thanks to a physician whose practice has extended to the well-being of the entire planet. Dr. Jeremy Sinclair now offers a unique form of preventative medicine, a delicate prescription for survival, found only in the quiet corners of the Twilight Zone. The office of Dr. Jeremy Sinclair was always kept at a precise temperature of 72 degrees. It was a room designed to soothe the fractured minds of the city, painted in a muted shade of seafoam green that the designer had promised would induce feelings of tranquility and surrender. On the wall hung 3 framed diplomas, their elegant calligraphy asserting that Jeremy was a man of science, a clinical psychiatrist who understood the intricate, fragile clockwork of the human brain. He had spent 15 years listening to the quiet unraveling of ordinary lives, categorizing sorrow, and prescribing order to those who found the world too loud, too chaotic, or too fast. Yet, on this particular Tuesday afternoon, the chaos of the outside world had walked right through his door in the form of Mrs. Milligan. Mrs. Milligan was a woman constructed entirely of sharp angles, floral perfume, and righteous indignation. She sat on the edge of the leather armchair, her handbag clutched to her chest like a shield against the madness she was forced to endure daily. She was the landlady of a modest apartment building on Elm Street, and her life, by her own account, was being systematically dismantled by one of her tenants. He is crazy, Mrs. Milligan declared, her voice rising to a pitch that threatened the structural integrity of the seafoam green walls. That is what he is, Doctor. A loony, a nutcase, a genuine certified wacko. I am a patient woman, but there are limits to what a person can bear. Jeremy offered a practiced, reassuring smile, leaning forward and resting his elbows on his mahogany desk. He picked up his fountain pen, tapping it gently against his pad of paper. But please don't call again. I may have to, Mr. Witherspoon, Jeremy said gently but firmly. The next time it might not be so lovely. You understand what I mean, don't you? Your niece is very worried. The landlady is threatening to evict you. If you do not cooperate, the city will step in. Wouldn't you rather invite me in of your own free will, so we can work this out together? Edgar stared at him, his shoulders slumping. He looked incredibly old and incredibly tired. He looked at the vast, whispering machine that filled his home, then back at the doctor. You must, Edgar whispered, his voice trembling. You must be very, very careful where you walk. Jeremy stepped carefully over a thick bundle of insulated copper wires that ran across the floorboards. The apartment felt like the interior of a massive, clockwork heart, every surface humming with a low, kinetic energy. How is it, Cloudshade? Edgar asked, looking up at a dangling cluster of feathers and silver foil. Jeremy paused, looking at the arrangement. It is very interesting, Mr. Witherspoon, but what exactly is it? This? Edgar asked, gesturing to the entire room with a sweep of his arms. Yes. This is the only thing that keeps the world from going poof. Now, let me understand you clearly, Mr. Witherspoon, Jeremy said, sitting down on the edge of a worn wooden stool, the only clear surface in the room. You say that this assembly of scrap metal and household junk is what keeps the entire world from going poof. And it's not easy, Edgar said, his voice laced with the exhaustion of a man who carried the weight of the heavens on his narrow shoulders. Most things are nearly impossible to find. The voice is very specific. It doesn't just ask for a key. It asks for a skate key. A brass skate key from 1964. Where would you look for a skate key in this day and age, Doctor? I can't imagine, Jeremy admitted. I found one, though, Edgar said proudly, pointing to a tiny, rusted key dangling from a red velvet ribbon near the window. You think that's crazy? Jeremy watched the key sway in the draft. Well, it is certainly an unusual hobby, Mr. Witherspoon. Edgar sighed, shaking his head. You think I do this for fun? You think I enjoy spending my retirement crawling through alleyways and arguing with garbage collectors? You wouldn't by any chance have a business card, would you? Jeremy reached into his breast pocket. Oh yes, of course. He handed a small, white pasteboard card to the old man. Her floral scarf. You will have to knock hard. His bell does not work. Jeremy walked her to the door. I will keep that in mind. Ah, Mrs. Milligan added, turning back at the threshold. I think he disconnected it himself. Down there in the basement apartment. He says the sound disrupts the frequency. Whatever that means. The basement of the Elm Street apartment building was cool, smelling of damp concrete, old laundry detergent, and the faint, sweet scent of pipe tobacco. Jeremy Sinclair walked down the concrete steps, his leather-soled shoes echoing in the narrow corridor. He adjusted his tie, feeling a familiar sense of professional curiosity mixed with the mild weariness that came from a long week of listening to the city's eccentricities. As he reached the door of apartment number 1B, he heard a strange array of sounds emanating from within. There was a rhythmic, metallic clinking, followed by the soft whir of a small motor, and then the delicate, chiming sound of a wind chime. It sounded like a miniature, chaotic factory was operating behind the heavy oak door. Jeremy knocked firmly on the wood. There was no answer, only a sudden, frantic rustling from inside. He knocked again, louder this time. Mr. Witherspoon, my name is Dr. Jeremy Sinclair. I am a physician. I would like to speak with you if I could. The door did not open, but a voice drifted through the keyhole, muffled and preoccupied. Oh, thank you. Thanks anyway, Mr. Pilchick. But I already found a brass thimble. Jeremy blinked, leaning closer to the door. I am not Mr. Pilchick, Mr. Witherspoon. I am Dr. Jeremy Sinclair. May I talk to you for a moment? Some other time, perhaps, the voice replied, sounding highly stressed. I have to look for a doll's head. I have precisely 4 minutes. Jeremy sighed softly. He had seen this many times before. An old man, living alone, retreating into a private world of irrational urgencies. To a clinical psychiatrist, it was an all-too-common sight, the mind constructing elaborate, nonsensical tasks to ward off the terrifying reality of aging, loneliness, and irrelevance. But Edgar Witherspoon was a most uncommon old man. He possessed a secret that reached out to the 4 corners of the earth, a hidden thread of connection that bound the fate of millions to the dusty floorboards of his basement apartment. And Dr. Jeremy Sinclair, with all his degrees and scientific certainty, was about to discover just how fragile the world truly was. With a firm click, the lock turned, and the door creaked open. Edgar Witherspoon stood in the entryway. He was a small, wiry man with a wild crown of white hair that looked as though it had been styled by an electrostatic generator. He wore a faded cardigan sweater that was missing 2 buttons, a pair of trousers that had seen better decades, and a look of intense, agonizing concentration. His eyes, however, were bright, clear, and utterly devoid of the vacant fog Jeremy usually associated with advanced dementia. Your niece, Jeremy began, adopting his warmest, most non-threatening tone. She worries about you very much, Mr. Witherspoon. She is a very nice woman, and she wants to make sure you are safe. Edgar stared at him, his brow furrowed. My niece? Yes, Cynthia. She is a very nice girl. Quite lovely. Tell her not to worry. See? A simple solution. Thanks for coming, Doctor. It has been a pleasure meeting you. Edgar began to close the door, but Jeremy gently placed his hand against the frame, preventing it from shutting. Mr. Witherspoon, please. I would really appreciate it if we could sit down and have a brief chat. I want to understand what you are working on here. Edgar paused, looking at Jeremy's hand, then up at his face. He let out a long, dramatic sigh. But I have to get on with my work. Your work? Jeremy asked, gesturing to the sliver of the room visible behind the old man. I would be very interested to hear about it. Edgar smiled, a mischievous, boyish grin that transformed his weathered face. I bet you'd like to know what it is, wouldn't you? Yes, actually, I would, Jeremy said. Wrong answer, Edgar snapped, his smile vanishing instantly. If you knew, you would try to explain it. If you tried to explain it, you would use words like subconscious and projection and all those other expensive terms you people buy with your fancy degrees. I promised to keep an open mind, Jeremy offered. Edgar squinted at him, as if measuring the depth of the doctor's sincerity. He tilted his head. You see a doll's head here anywhere? Jeremy looked around the dimly lit hallway. You mean like that one? He asked, pointing to a plastic, brunette doll's head resting on top of a stack of old newspapers near the door. Edgar scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. Ah, too big. Also, she is a brunette. I need blonde, and I need it in 5 minutes. And what for, Mr. Witherspoon? What happens if you do not find a blonde doll's head in 5 minutes? Edgar looked at him as if Jeremy had just asked why the sun rose in the east. What happens? You want Santa Barbara to fall into the ocean? Is that what you want, Doctor? If not, then stand aside, sir. Stand aside. Before Jeremy could respond, Edgar pushed past him with surprising agility, darting out into the hallway and heading toward a pile of discarded cardboard boxes near the laundry room. He began rummaging through them with frantic energy, his hands moving like pale spiders through the paper and plastic. Jeremy followed him, watching in silence as the old man tossed aside a broken toaster, several empty soda cans, and a stack of yellowed magazines. Ah! Edgar cried out, his voice echoing in the concrete corridor. Woohoo! Just in the nick of time. No time to lose. He emerged from the shadow of the laundry room holding a small, dirty, blonde plastic doll's head. It was missing one blue glass eye and its synthetic hair was badly matted, but to Edgar, it appeared to be the Holy Grail. He turned and scrambled back to his apartment, his bedroom slippers slapping against the floor. Jeremy hurried after him, arriving at the doorway just as Edgar was muttering to himself, inserting the doll's head onto the end of a long, bent copper wire that extended from a mass's. "2," Edgar retorted, glaring at the doctor. "No," Jeremy said patiently. "I do not. You hear mine, don't you?" Edgar snapped. Jeremy hesitated for a fraction of a second. "That's not the same thing, Mr. Witherspoon. I hear your physical voice speaking to me in this room." "Why?" Edgar challenged, his eyes bright with a desperate logic. "What's the difference between a sane man hearing a crazy voice and a crazy man hearing a sane voice? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Maybe we are both just listening to what we can. You don't understand the risk you're taking by keeping me here, Doctor. You don't understand what you've done." The wall clock chimed the hour. It was 15 minutes past 3 in the afternoon. Edgar stiffened, his head tilting as if listening to a distant sound that no one else could hear. His face drained of all color, and his eyes filled with a profound, helpless horror. "I knew it," Edgar whispered, his voice barely audible. "There goes Tatoa." Jeremy frowned, looking up from his papers. "What's Tatoa?" "A tiny island in the South Pacific," Edgar said, his voice trembling with a grief so real, so visceral, that it made Jeremy's chest tighten. "What time is it, Doctor?" "It is 3:17, Jeremy said, looking at his wristwatch. At 3:17 in the afternoon, Edgar said quietly, looking down at his worn shoes, "Tatoa became history. Because of you. Because I wasn't there to adjust the balance." "Please," Cynthia sobbed, turning her face away. "Take him. Please." The two orderlies stepped forward, gently taking Edgar by the arms. He did not struggle. He let them lead him toward the door, his feet dragging slightly on the linoleum floor. As he reached the threshold, he turned back to Jeremy. "Please, Doctor," Edgar pleaded, his voice cracking. "There is still time. It will take me days to clean up all that junk if they throw it out. Keep the landlady away from it. Do not let her touch the machine. Remember Tatoa." The door closed behind them, leaving the office in a heavy, suffocating silence. Jeremy sat down at his desk, staring at the closed door. He felt a cold dread pooling in his stomach, a feeling that defied all his years of training, all his scientific certainty. "Classic senile state," Jeremy muttered to himself, his voice sounding hollow in the quiet room. Tired, feeling useless, he created a fantasy. A typical delusion of grandeur to convince himself that morning, reviewing his notes on Edgar Witherspoon. But his mind kept wandering back to the rhythmic clinking of the spoons and the gentle bobbing of the blonde doll's head. The door to his office opened, and Cynthia, Edgar's niece, stepped inside. She was a young woman with kind, tired eyes, dressed in a sensible trench coat. "Good afternoon, Doctor," she said, sitting down in the armchair. "Did you see Uncle Edgar?" "Yes, I did, yesterday morning," Jeremy replied, turning his chair to face her. "Well?" Cynthia asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "What do you think?" Jeremy hesitated, tapping his fingers on his desk. I couldn't exactly call it a long conversation, but it was long enough to realize that he is absolutely out of his mind." Cynthia finished the sentence for him, her eyes filling with tears. "On the other hand," Jeremy said softly, trying to offer some comfort, "Mr. Witherspoon appears happy and, quite frankly, harmless. He is living in a world of his own creation, but he does not seem to possess any malevolent intent." "Harmless?" Cynthia shook her head, a tear escaping and running down her cheek. "He pesters strangers on the street, Doctor. He runs after garbage trucks, shouting at the sanitation workers. That is far from harmless. Just the other day, somebody saw him take a baby's bottle right out of its carriage in the park. The mother was terrified. I am afraid he will get arrested next time. Or worse, he will wander into traffic. Doctor, I am at my wit's end. I will sign anything, cooperate in any way I need to. We have to put him somewhere where he can be looked after. Somewhere safe. Jeremy looked at the commitment forms resting on his desk. Legally, he could initiate a 72-hour psychiatric hold for observation. It was the standard procedure for individuals deemed unable to care for themselves due to severe mental illness. But something about Edgar's bright, clear eyes made him hesitate. "All right," Jeremy said, closing the folder. "Maybe I'll have another chat with him. A longer one this time. See if I can establish a better rapport. Perhaps we can persuade him to accept some voluntary assistance before we resort to involuntary commitment." He stopped speaking suddenly, his ears straining. "Did you hear that?" Jeremy asked, looking toward the window. "Hear what?" Cynthia asked, wiping her eyes. There was something about a... Jeremy shook his head, rubbing his temples. A strange, fleeting sensation had passed over him, like a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure, accompanied by a very faint, distant rumbling. "Sorry, it was nothing. I don't know what I was thinking. I will call you Cynthia, as soon as I can." "Thank you very much, doctor," she said, rising from her chair and slipping her gloves on. "I just want him to be safe." The radio in Jeremy's car was playing softly as he drove back to Elm Street later that evening. The announcer's voice was a low, soothing drone. "Activity could be a problem," the voice said. "Acid rain is affecting the northern lakes even more than scientists previously estimated, leading to concerns over the local trout populations." Jeremy parked his car and walked down the steps to the basement of the apartment building. The air felt heavier tonight, thick with the scent of rain. He approached the door of apartment 1B and knocked firmly. "Mr. Witherspoon?" There was no sound from within, no clinking of spoons, no whirring of motors. The silence was heavy and unsettling. "Go away." Edgar's voice came from behind the door, flat and uncharacteristically cold. "I'm not home. It is Dr. Sinclair, Mr. Witherspoon. I was here last week. You remember me?" "Sorry, I wasn't home last week either," Edgar replied. Jeremy took a deep breath, adopting his most authoritative professional tone. "Mr. Witherspoon, I could legally force you to open this door to me. I have the paperwork that would allow the authorities to enter. Is that what you want?" The lock clicked, and the door opened a few inches, held in place by a sturdy brass chain. Edgar peered through the crack, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "You're a curious one," the old man muttered. "Odd, you mean?" Jeremy asked. "I mean nosy," Edgar said. "I am paid to be nosy," Jeremy countered with a small, wry smile. "Curious, I mean, really?" Edgar seemed to soften slightly, his curiosity piqued. "Don't you think that's odd? Most people are curious for nothing. They want to know what their neighbors are eating for dinner, or who is sleeping with whom. But they don't care about the things that actually matter. That is very nice for you, though, being paid to be curious. Are the hours good?" "The hours are long, Mr. Witherspoon," Jeremy said. "Now, will you let me in?" Edgar hesitated, then slowly unlatched the chain and stepped back, allowing the doctor to enter. The apartment was even more crowded than before. New elements had been added to the kinetic sculpture. A silver-plated saxophone was now suspended from a copper pipe, its bell positioned directly beneath a dangling lead fishing weight. A series of glass marbles were resting in a wooden track, poised to roll at the slightest vibration. "Mr. Witherspoon," Jeremy said, gesturing to the dizzying array of objects. "Why do you collect all of this? The dolls' heads, the old shoes, the paper clips, the brass thimble? What is the purpose of all this clutter?" Edgar looked at him, his expression one of mild disappointment. "I can't afford Rembrandts, doctor." "What?" Jeremy asked, confused. "Rembrandts," Edgar repeated as if speaking to a child. "Beautiful things. Masterpieces. If I could afford them, maybe I would collect them instead. But the voice doesn't care about art. The voice cares about function." "The voice?" Jeremy asked, his clinical instincts instantly sharpening. "You hear a voice, Mr. Witherspoon?" "Oh no," Edgar muttered suddenly, his eyes darting to a small, wooden pulley near the ceiling. It was beginning to tremble. "Oh no, not now." He rushed across the room, grabbing a small, blue plastic funnel from a table and wedging it beneath a dripping copper tube. The trembling stopped, and the machine returned to its delicate, whispering hum. Edgar turned back to Jeremy, his face pale. As usual, doctor, it has been lovely. We'll give you double what you are currently getting for it. I will write you a check right now for the first 3 months. I will be up later with the rest of the paperwork. Just leave everything exactly as it is. Mrs. Milligan stared at the checkbook, her skepticism warring with her greed. Greed, as it usually did, won the day. Well, she said, her voice softening significantly. If it is for medical science, I suppose I can make an exception. I'll be upstairs, doctor. Thank you. She took the check from his hand and shuffled out of the apartment, leaving Jeremy alone with the whispering machine. He stood in the center of the room, listening to the delicate, rhythmic clinking of the spoons, the gentle hum of the tiny motors, and the soft bobbing of the blonde doll's head. Felt like a living thing, a fragile, beautiful creature that was keeping the entire planet from spinning into the dark void of space. The door behind him creaked open, and Jeremy spun around, expecting to see Miss Walker with Edgar. Instead, Edgar Witherspoon walked in alone. He was no longer wearing his hospital clothes. He was dressed in a sharp, tweed suit that looked decades old but was meticulously pressed. He carried a small, battered leather suitcase in one hand. He's escaped, Jeremy whispered, staring at him. Edgar smiled, a gentle, serene expression on his face. Mr. Witherspoon, Jeremy cried, stepping forward. Should I call the hospital? No, everything is going to be fine. I've rented the apartment. The machine is safe. You got a handkerchief, doctor? Edgar asked, looking down at his jacket pocket. Oh yes, Jeremy said, reaching into his pocket and handing a clean, white handkerchief to the old man. Yes, right away. Thanks, Edgar said, taking the handkerchief and dabbing his brow. That lady, your assistant, had me dressed so fast. I left mine behind at the clinic. Mr. Witherspoon, Jeremy said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to begin to apologize to you. Nothing in all my years of training, nothing in my textbooks or my studies, had prepared me for a case like yours. I was blind. I was foolish. Edgar smiled, patting Jeremy's arm gently. Well, it was very nice meeting you, doctor. Where are you going? Jeremy asked, looking at the suitcase in the old man's hand. Away, finally, Edgar said, his eyes bright with excitement. After 11 years of doing this, I am finally going away. But what about the machine? Jeremy asked, his voice rising in panic. What about the balance? Who will maintain it? Edgar took it, his eyes lighting up. Oh, magnificent. That was an easy one. He immediately walked over to a delicate balance scale made of wooden rulers and copper wire, placing the business card on one side. The scale tipped slightly, leveling out a small container of sand on the opposite side. Well, Jeremy said, standing up, I won't take up any more of your time. I've seen more than enough. I used to be an engineer, Edgar said quietly, his voice tracing the memory back into the past. I worked for the city, built bridges, designed water filtration systems, earned lots of money too. Then I retired. He looked around the room, his eyes reflecting the soft, metallic glint of the dangling copper. Worst mistake I ever made, Edgar continued. Life was so damned boring. There was nothing to do but watch the grass grow and wait for the end. I felt like an old machine that had been turned off and left to rust in a corner. And then, the voice spoke to me. Jeremy sat back down, his professional interest reignited. Oh, you also hear voices, Mr. Witherspoon? You too? Edgar asked, his eyes widening in surprise. Please, tell me about it. No, Jeremy corrected quickly, realizing his mistake. No, I do not hear voices. I am a psychiatrist. I study the phenomenon. Please tell me about yours. When did it start? I was sitting in the park one day, Edgar said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Feeding the pigeons, enjoying the sunshine. And suddenly, there it was. The voice. It didn't come from the trees or the sky. came from right inside my head. But it wasn't my voice. Edgar, it said. Have you ever been to England? And what did you say? Jeremy asked. I said, oh yes, once when I was a young man. Why do you ask? But that's what the voice asked me first. Edgar, it said, in the heart of the great clock tower they call Big Ben, there is a massive pendulum. That pendulum tells the clock how fast to tick. Did you know that, Edgar? At the bottom of that pendulum, on top of the big lead weight, there is a stack of pennies. Ordinary copper pennies. Jeremy watched the old man, fascinated despite himself. Every so often, Edgar continued, the keepers of the clock take 1 penny off. And do you know what happens? The clock speeds up. Or, if they need to, they put 1 penny on and the clock slows down. The pennies change the balance of the pendulum just a little bit, just a fraction of an ounce. But it is enough to keep the entire massive mechanism running perfectly. Keeps the time of the nation. So, Jeremy said, looking around the room, what you have built here is some kind of clock. Of course not. Edgar scoffed, looking irritated. Why on earth would I build a clock? You can buy a clock for $3 at any drugstore, and it doesn't lose 10 seconds in a year. No, doctor, this is not a clock. The voice said to me, Edgar, the world is a funny place. Little wars here, big wars there, volcanoes going off, storms, tornadoes, a terrific amount of noise and bother. The world is always spinning out of control, tilting this way and that. You have to build something that will keep the world from going too far. Maybe even keep it from going poof. What the copper pennies do for Big Ben, this machine does for the planet. Jeremy looked at the delicate, whispering structure, the sheer, staggering madness of the concept settling over him. And who do you think it is who's speaking to you, Mr. Witherspoon? Who is the voice? Well, Edgar said, scratching his chin thoughtfully, sometimes I think it's God. And then I think, no, God would have a much deeper voice. This voice is quite pleasant, really, rather ordinary. He paused, reaching into a small wooden bowl on the table. Would you care for a prune, doctor? Oh no, thank you, Jeremy said, rising from the stool. I was just leaving. But you've just arrived, Edgar protested. Oh, careful, Edgar cried out suddenly as Jeremy took a step toward the door. Jeremy froze, his foot hovering inches above a thin, black thread stretched across the floorboards. I have no idea how the thing works, Edgar whispered, his eyes wide with anxiety. All I know is that the voice tells me what it needs and I get it. If you trip over that thread, doctor, I don't know what might happen. We could lose Chicago. Or perhaps the trains in France would run backwards. It is a very delicate balance. Goodbye, Mr. Witherspoon, Jeremy said, stepping carefully over the thread and reaching the safety of the hallway. You keep up the good work. We could perhaps call it a kinetic sculpture. Would that make your niece happy? If we tell her it is an art installation? What? Edgar asked, looking confused again. Oh no. Art is for museums. This is for survival. He followed Jeremy to the door, his expression suddenly urgent. If you happen to run across an old tuba, would you bring it by? I need it in 2 hours. The voice was very insistent about the tuba. I will keep my eyes open, Jeremy said, stepping out into the cool basement corridor. The next morning, the clinical administrative office was quiet, save for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. Jeremy Sinclair sat at his desk, his fountain pen hovering over the commitment paperwork. Cynthia stood before him, her hands clasped tightly. Beside her stood 2 male orderlies in clean, white uniforms, their expressions professional and detached. Cynthia, don't do this to me. Edgar's voice was quiet, stripped of its usual manic energy. He stood in the center of the office, flanked by the orderlies, looking incredibly small and frail in his oversized coat. Uncle Edgar, please, Cynthia said, her voice cracking with emotion. It's just for 3 days. Just 3 days while they observe you at the hospital. They want to help you. It's too long, Edgar said, his voice rising in panic. 3 days is too long. The machine has to be maintained. It has to be kept in balance every hour, every minute. If I am gone for 3 days, the whole thing will fall apart. The world will tilt, Cynthia. Mr. Witherspoon, Jeremy said, stepping around his desk. You hear voices. You must understand that this is not normal. Healthy people do not hear voices in their heads. You hear voices